we can get through the meeting quickly as possible. Just to point out some housekeeping. There is an event of a fire. There is a exit. We come out of the staircase. We are recording this meeting. It's on Teams. It's on live at the moment. If anyone wishes to speak, you come through the chair, and we also do need to put your microphone on if you speak. Otherwise, people online can't hear it. And yeah, just your phones, if you've got them, to mute or silent, if that's possible. Yeah. Thank you. I think if I miss anything out, Sarah, at all, for housekeeping. Great, thank you. Right, so let's move on to our agenda. And the first one is apologies and any substitutions. I know we've got one from Councillor Jordan. Are there any other apologies? No, I think we're all here, and it's actually the committee, and no substitutions. Members, do you have any declarations of interest you might have in this evening's agenda? Yes, so I've got Councillor Fuller and Councillor Jarman. Councillor Fuller.
Just to put it on record, I am chairman of the Isle of Wight Local Access Forum, and anything that we discuss within the work plan about public access and anything like that, I want to put on record that I am actually chairman, and that is an independent position that I hold rather than the position for the Isle of Wight Council. So again, if we talk too much about access, then I might have to take a step out.
Councillor Fuller. Councillor Jarman.
Yeah, non-pecuniary interest, as I'm a walk leader with the Walking for Health scheme and a member of various other walking groups on the island. So a lot of the references in here to footpaths apply to those activities.
Thank you. Councillor Brodie.
Yes, almost similarly, I should declare that I'm a member of Cycle Wight, a pressure group on the island, and cycling is referred to in the local transport plan on a regular basis. Thank you.
And I will also declare I'm a member of Cycle Wight too. Thank you.
I should declare I'm a member of Cycle Wight too.
Thank you. Okay. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Right, we're going to move on to public question time. We've had some written questions which I've got in front of me. I think some of the people that have asked them are in the room. I'll take them in the order that we've received them, and if we have any time afterwards, then we will be able to take some more oral questions. So the first question is from Mrs. Richards. I can see, Mrs. Richards, you did say you wanted me to ask, but if you're here, that'd be much better coming from you. So just turn the microphone on and ask a question.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. In response to a recent Freedom of Information request about the directional closure of Newport Road, the Council stated that no equality impact assessment was required and confirmed that there was no consultation or even any internal consideration of the impact on people with protected characteristics. The justification relied solely on highways legislation with no reference to the Council's duties under the Equality Act 2010. Given that the public sector equality duty applies to all public functions, including temporary decisions, can the Chair explain how this Council ensures that equality obligations are properly met in the planning and implementation of traffic management measures, and what steps will be taken to address this apparent failure?
Thank you very much, Ms. Richards. So I have a response here, which I'll read out. In the UK, there is no explicit statutory requirement to produce an equality impact assessment, specifically for temporary traffic regulation orders. In addition to this, if it was a requirement, it would not be the Isle of Wight Council that completed the equalities impact statement for these works, because the works were the responsibility of Captiva on behalf of Sovereign Homes. However, public authorities, including local councils and highway authorities, are subject to the public sector equality duty under the Equality Act 2010. Roadworks are temporary in nature. They are to facilitate highways maintenance of statutory utilities, and construction approved through planning applications, all of which have a legal right to occupy the highway. The planning of temporary roadworks is governed by legislation that clearly states that there will be disruption caused by roadworks. To ensure that the council was carrying out its public sector equality duty during the construction of the junction for the Sovereign Housing Acorn Farm development, the following actions were taken by Captiva, the Isle of Wight Council or Island Roads. 1, a safe, compliant traffic management system, management plan that was designed to create additional space on the network for the recognised disruption was designed and implemented. 2, the one-way system for those travelling southbound ensured that those travelling to hospital in either direction were impacted as little as possible. 3, advance warning of the works were given by signs on the road, information on the council website and across local media. This gave time for residents to plan their journey and time to allow extra time for it. 4, public transport buses were allowed northbound through the closure to ensure that the most vulnerable residents without the use of a private car could still reach their destinations. 5, emergency services responding to calls from the public could travel through northbound through the one-way system to ensure that response times were not affected. Each major roadwork scheme is different and the traffic management is planned accordingly to try to minimise the recognised disruption. Island Roads are responsible for the review and sign-off of traffic management plans, and third-party developers and statutory utilities are responsible for the communication to the public. This council will continue to work alongside Island Roads, have oversight of works on network, and ensure that our PSD, the public sector equality duty, is fulfilled. And do you have a supplementary?
I do have a supplementary, Chair, thank you. The draft local transport plan, which is on the agenda for this meeting, commits to an inclusive transport system that removes barriers for people with protected characteristics, including young people accessing education. Yet the Newport Road closure during exam season, with no equality impact assessment, disadvantaged the most vulnerable students who are reliant on private transport, including those to whom the local authority carries a direct duty of care. How does this align with the strategy's stated commitments, and how will the council ensure that these principles are actively applied in future, not just written into policy?
Thank you for your questions. Quite a lot in there. Mrs. Love, did you want to respond to that now, or should we give a written response?
Sorry, I can start, and then if there's further information, then obviously we can provide a written response. So the local transport plan is the transport strategy for the island for the next 10 years, 15 years, apologies. So obviously within that, it's absolutely implicit that we require accessibility and to ensure that all groups of population, including the most vulnerable, including children, have safe and free access and to opportunities of education and employment. Temporary roadworks is a very different matter because by their nature they are temporary, so they do not have the same requirements applied to them. So we have, as described in the answer, carried out our public sector equality duties as far as possible for those roadworks, and this won't be the only set of major roadworks, and we are not alone in the way that we manage roadworks. This is a national system for managing roadworks, and it is the same across the country. The emphasis is on the fact that it is temporary, it is recognised that it will cause disruption, and we will do as much as possible to ensure that the most vulnerable groups of people are still able to access opportunities.
Thank you, Mrs. Love. Thank you. So my next question is from Carl Feeney. Mr. Feeney, you there? I can see you. Yes, would you like to come and ask your question? To put the microphone on. Yeah.
The 112-page draft Isle of Wight transport plan, which is intended to run for the next 15 years, has these 4 objectives as copied below. The 4 objectives reflect our vision, and delivery of these objectives will be the focus of the ITP. Objective 1, a transport network which reduces or produces net zero greenhouse gas emissions and as resilient to the impacts of climate change. The solution, clearly a fixed link tunnel, will facilitate the movement of impending autonomous electric or hydrogen powered privately owned or public transport vehicles in a seamless manner without barriers. Climate change will not affect the tunnel under the Solent in any way. Objective 2 from the Council. People and goods can travel sustainably and efficiently to and from and around the island to help grow the local economy. The solution, clearly a fixed link tunnel, will allow fast and efficient travel on and off the island to facilitate business and tourism, careers and education growth. Objective 3 from the Council, an inclusive, accessible and affordable transport network for all. The solution, clearly a fixed link tunnel, will facilitate a seamless and immediate transport network for anybody at any time of the day, be it privately owned vehicle or public transport. Objective 4 from the Council, a safe transport network that supports thriving, healthier communities. Solution, clearly a fixed link tunnel will facilitate a safe and seamless cross-Solent transport network that will create enormous personal benefits in healthcare, education and business. Facilities will grow and demographics will balance. Considering the aforementioned obvious beneficial aspects of a future fixed link tunnel to and from the Isle of Wight, which clearly solve the stated 4 objectives in the LTP4, there is no mention at all of a fixed link cross-Solent tunnel option in the 112-page draft transport plan. This appears a blatant and negligent omission. My question to the committee is, the first stage of a fixed link tunnel between the Isle of Wight and the mainland is commissioning a viability study. Will the committee support this and actively task officers and engage our 2 MPs to secure the necessary funding from government to complete a viability study to be included within the LTP4?
Thank you, Mr. Feeney. I've got a response here for you. The Isle of Wight Council, through the Island Transport Plan, does acknowledge the current issues and long-held concerns related to cross-Solent travel. At this time, it would be inappropriate, even with a 15-year plan, to commit to an individual measure to address these issues, or that the Council alone could or should act in this capacity. This is in recognition of the complex challenges that would need to be overcome before a strategic business case could be arrived at for such a major piece of national infrastructure. There are challenges that would need to be overcome for a fixed link, including the high level investment required, which would far exceed what the Council would be able to secure. Additionally, any proposal would require support and involvement with our neighbouring authorities, landowners, government departments, as well as various other bodies. Likewise, given the scale, it would be necessary to secure a majority consensus from island residents and businesses that a particular proposal was the most appropriate use of local sources as well as public funds. On this basis, the future of cross-Solent travel is referenced within the Island Transport Plan, and to take proposals forward would require a sub-regional approach. Therefore, it is the intention to highlight within a final draft, following consultation, the potential for the mayoral combined authority for Hampshire and the Solent to take this matter forward as part of the devolution proposals. In the interim, our focus will be to support the ongoing work of the MPs and the leader, as well as continuing to work in partnership with the local ferry operators to explore potential opportunities for improving current services. Mr. Feeney, you are able to have a supplementary question if you'd like. Okay. I've only got 3 minutes left for public questions. We've had some lengthy ones come in. I've got one question that is from Mrs. Jean Saunders that I've received. Mrs. Saunders has asked me to, You're here, are you? Mr. Swan, we've only got 3 minutes left. I don't know whether you wanted just to give a very, very quick précis of your, or go straight to your question, and we can give your response. Yeah, you will receive a written response for this. If I could maybe just read out, do you want me to read out the response so everyone knows? Okay, well, if you use the time as you wish.
My question relates to the inclusive and accessible built environment and related activities carried out in compliance with requirements of the Equality Act 2010 and Public Sector Equality Duty. It states in the Department of Transport Inclusive Mobility Guide to Best Practice on Access to Pedestrian and Transport Infrastructure that good inclusive design in public realm benefits all users. My son is manual wheelchair dependent and mindful of maintaining his current fitness level, which he endeavours to do through using the immediate surrounding area where we live in Nichols Street on Horsebridge Hill. He also likes to access other areas such as cycle routes, multi-tracks. However, invariably he finds it inhibiting in doing so, primarily due to the poor surface material used or lack of maintenance, making it difficult to negotiate smoothly and safely on a par with family and friends. Horsebridge Hill is on the Horsebridge Hill is on the A3020 Cows to Newport busy main road, and over the past 4 years, 4.5 years, I've been lobbying the Isle of Wight Council to install drop curbs at the junction of Lonsdale Avenue to enable independent and equal access on a par with ambulant pedestrians for travel towards St Mary's Hospital, located about half a mile away from home, and for onward travel to the local town of Newport. At the same time, I've been lobbying for drop curbs to be installed at Partridge Road bus stop, located opposite Lonsdale Avenue, to access the bus service towards St Mary's Hospital in Newport, which my son currently is unable to access. Therefore, he does not have equal access on a par with ambulant pedestrians. I've also highlighted to Council that the pedestrian crossing located near Lonsdale Avenue and Partridge Road is not always safely negotiable via a manual wheelchair due to location of the press button pole and vegetation encroaching and narrowing the usable clear surface space. The pavement located on the west side of Horsebridge Hill between Nicholson Street, where we live, and Lonsdale Avenue had always been more than a minimum width of 2,000 millimetres, as recommended in the Department of Transport Inclusive Mobility Guide to Best Practice and Transport Infrastructure. Being located on the hill and beside the busy main road, having a wide pavement has enabled my son to safely negotiate to and from, even when the pavement having a camber towards the road. The width also allows sufficient space for him and friends, family members to walk alongside, as well as for others using mobility scooters or pushing a pram to pass by, allowing safe protected distance from fast moving traffic. 8 weeks ago, his projected safe use of pavement changed after a conscious decision was made to narrow the pavement to allow space for an extra lane of traffic to access the Three Oaks housing development. The priority for vehicles vehicle users has been to the detriment to the equality of access for pedestrians. This has resulted in the width being narrowed to an absolute bare accepted minimum of 1,000 millimetres at a crucial point in the pavement, directly next to the drop curb for the south pedestrian crossing, where there is a camber in the pavement and where blister tactile paving is installed. In terms of pavement width, the clear usable width should be free from any obstruction, including street furniture and vegetation, to a minimum width to a minimum height of 2,300 millimetres, as set out in the Department for Transport Inclusive Mobility Guide to Best Practice on Access to Pedestrian and Transport Infrastructure. Additionally, it states that propelling a wheelchair manually needs a minimum clearance of 50 millimetres and preferably 100 millimetres on both sides. The pavement is bored into leyland DI hedging, which grows rapidly and is known to significantly encroach on the clear usable width of the pavement. The original pavement was comfortably allowed safe use, clear usable space to avoid the encroaching growth. However, now the pavement has been narrowed, it will offer little protection from the volume of traffic, and the encroaching growth will render the pavement difficult to negotiate and possibly to a point where it will be inaccessible. There are several members of the community who use mobility scooters who will equally be affected. In fact, a couple of weeks ago, I had no other option than to step off the pavement into the road to allow users to use the user who was taking a dog for a walk who pass by, since they took the whole width of the pavement up. At that moment in time, the section of road was cordoned off to traffic during the one-way restriction, therefore making it possible for me to safely step into the road. However, that is no longer possible with the volume of traffic using the road. Therefore, this poses a major problem for protected equal access and safe use for my son and other members of the community with mobility difficulties. Additionally, with 145 homes currently being built on the Three Oaks development, and most likely more homes being built at a later stage, and with the pavement being the main onward access point south towards the local school and Newport and north towards the local shop, the footfall is likely to increase. Therefore, in narrowing the pavement, it appears that no forward planning has taken place. It has made equal access more difficult. The pavement on the east side of the road, which was used as a diversion pedestrian route during the Three Oaks Road Junction works, was and remains in a very poor state of repair, with broken, cracked and uneven surface, narrowed by encroaching vegetation. Nevertheless, this was deemed suitable for pedestrian use towards the Longsdale pedestrian crossing. On his first attempt at using the diversion route, my son found it full of hazards and difficult to negotiate due to the poor state of the surface and not having enough space to safely negotiate the immediate right turn to access the push button control at the Longsdale crossing. I've almost seen it. Stemming from this experience, it was only after I immediately notified the foreman of works that some remedial work took place in the attempt to make the pedestrian diversion route only just accessible but not safe to use. During the works, it got to a stage where my son's usual points of access to his local community were cut off to him due to the direct action taken following the short notice of the start of the junction roadworks. It is clear that there have been no consideration of a substantial impact on the residents of the local community located within the junction roadwork zone. On the broader impact on the increase of population growth from the Three Oaks housing development and for the protected quality of access use of the local pavements and bus stop located at Partridge Road. My question is, when and how is the Isle of Wight Council going to start demonstration to the public that they are taking direct action and being proactive in providing good inclusive design in the public round that benefits all users? And what policies and procedures is the Isle of Wight Council going to put in place to ensure that they consult with the public as a whole and be mindful that not everyone belongs to a specific user group? And how much longer will we have to wait for the drop curbs at Lonsdale Avenue and Partridge Road bus stop to be installed, as we've already been waiting for 4.5 years? And what measures are going to be taken to reverse the priority for vehicle users over the detriment to equality of access for pedestrians? Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Saunders. I will read it a response, but I'm afraid we won't be able to take any oral questions. And Ms. Saunders, if you have a supplementary, you're more than welcome to send it out. Okay, but this will be sent out, and all of the questions we've had this evening will be printed as part of the minutes and on public record. To acknowledge that the remodelling of the public highway at Horsebridge Hill to accommodate the formation of a signalised junction to serve the Three Oaks residential development has brought about localised reductions in the former footway width on the western side of the carriageway. However, these works have been subject to a detailed design review process, a subsequent on-site inspection during the delivery phase to ensure compliance with national design standards and guidance for all users. Department of Transport Inclusive Mobility, a guide to best practice on access to pedestrian and transport infrastructure, December 2021, advised the following in respect to footway widths. Footways and footpaths should be made as wide as is practicable, but under normal circumstances, a width of 2,000 millimetres is a minimum that should be provided, as this allows enough space for 2 wheelchair users to pass, even if they're using larger electric mobility scooters. This is not feasible due to physical constraints, and the minimum width of 1,500 millimetres could be regarded as a minimum acceptable under most circumstances. This should enable a wheelchair user and a walker to pass each other. Where there is an obstacle, such as lamp columns, signposts, or electric vehicle charging points, the absolute minimum width should be 1,000 millimetres, but the maximum length of such a restricted space should be 6 metres. However, in this instance, due to the physical constraints of the highway boundary and land falling under the control of the developer, it has not been possible to maintain a constant footway width of 2,000 millimetres to the extent that approximately 30 linear metres of the former footway has been reduced in width to a minimum of 1,500 millimetres, with there being further localised narrowing to a width of 1,050 metres at the point of the still to be installed traffic lights on the southern side of the junction. While it's accepted that the implementation of work so as to comply with minimum widths may not seem to be best practice, compliance with these standards did not provide the authority with any grounds for refusal at the planning or highway design review stage. The comments in respect to the limitations of the highway network to the south of the new junction, Partridge Road, Lonsdale Avenue, and the existing signal control crossing are noted, and the council is intending to introduce permanent accessibility improvements to this section of Parkhurst Road and Horsebridge Hill, with additional dropped tactile crossing points to be installed within the next 12 months. The council is also seeking to clarify further accessibility bus stop improvement works that are due to be delivered as part of the Three Oaks residential development. Thank you. So that's the end of public questions for this evening. So we do only have 15 minutes for that. So I'm going to just get my papers in order. So we're now moving on to public questions. Some public questions. Now the next item is members' question time, and I have received some questions here from members of the committee, including myself, actually, which you might find a bit odd, but that's sometimes the way you have to do things. So I'm going to go through them in the order that I've got them here on my table now. So the first question is from Councillor Becca Cameron. Is Becca here? No. It was to do with with Horsebridge Hill, actually. So there's several questions about that. So I think we'll probably just pop that in one. I think there's an overarching. I think that's probably best. We'll see how time we go. But again, this will all be part of the papers, and Councillor Cameron will be sent the response. Next question I have from Councillor Ed Blake, and I have spotted Ed Blake here. Councillor Blake, would you like to ask a question?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. If you don't mind, I'll ask my question. I won't ask you to read out the answer, but I'll then move straight into the supplementary, which should be a brief answer from yourself, if that's possible. Is that
so just to be clarified, you don't want me to read out the answer?
For the sake of, I know you've got a lot of questions coming up, and so my answer is quite lengthy, and I think if members want to find out the answer, or the public, they'll be able to find it separately. But if you might mind, I'll read out what my question was, and then move on to supplementary, if that's okay. So within the last year, the Undercliff area has had a realisation of all 4 roads into the area being severed or closed simultaneously. Whilst considering the creation of an island transport strategy, can the committee also look at the creation of a sub-strategy regarding the wider Undercliff area, taking in contingency plans, long-term and immediate works to protect the 8,000 residents contained within it? And
I'll just read one tiny piece out just to help, just to say, in response to a request, I can confirm that a formal area strategy focused on the Undercliff can be developed alongside the Island Local Transport Plan. Supplementary?
Very quick supplementary, please, Chair. Just basically to say, with the Chair speaking on behalf of the committee, like to agree with me that the best way of getting a final solution where end goal would be to get government funding, and the best way for that would to have a fully itemised wish list, effectively, that we can then advertise out as being things that we're looking to have funded, rather than going piecemeal with a broken strategy, and having an overarching consideration of how we'd like to end up with the situation would be the best way forward.
Thank you for that question. There's lots of words being put in my mouth there, and but I get your drift there. But we have to look at what is the best solutions to go forward, and also with what we've the resources we've got. I don't know if Ms. Lovely wanted to respond to that at all.
So obviously we have had conversations with Councillor Blake, and this is definitely a priority. We've also met with the community. We have reopen Leeson Road, we're clearing Belgrave Road, we're working on the retaining walls, etc. So we are taking a proactive response at the moment within the financial constraints or the budget that we have, because we haven't been given any government funding for this yet. But yes, as Councillor Blake's answer, the answer that we gave basically was yes, that can be done. So we can write a strategy for the Undercliff, and in previous meetings we've committed to recruiting a high, sort of like a network resilience officer for the whole island, to focus on what the impact on the road network of coastal erosion and active landslips are, and that's in the process of recruitment, so that person will be able to assist as well. So in short, yes, Councillor Blake's request will be done.
Thank you very much. So let's go on to my next question, and this is a written question from Councillor Ward. Councillor Ward, I can see Councillor Ward, who's right next to me. Would you like to read out your question, Councillor Ward?
Thank you, Chair. In light of the recent furore in the national and local media about derelict hotels and other buildings in Sandown, should the Isle of Wight Council be doing its best to facilitate a solution? Derelict hotels are a direct consequence of the huge reduction in tourism, in the tourism economy of before the turn of the century, which in turn has undermined the tourism economy of much of the island. However, the Isle of Wight Council still has planning policies that were introduced to protect the level of tourism of the island enjoyed in the last century by protecting seafront hotels for only tourism purposes. However, these policies today severely hinder and hold back regeneration of Sandown and our economy. At the recent examination of our draft island planning strategy, 3 people told the inspectors that the policy to protect seafront hotels for tourism was outdated and needed urgent revision, as they prevented the redevelopment of long derelict hotel sites. Policies are a clear disincentive for the owners and/or investors. I ask this committee that this committee reviews and recommends a change of policy in our next meeting, if not sooner. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Ward. I'll just read the response out. The Isle of Wight Council is doing its best with the resources and powers available to it to facilitate a solution regarding the derelict buildings in Sandown. Sorry, is it okay if we just quiet in the gallery? Sorry, we're picking it up. Thank you. Sorry. The council's planning policies are one of the best tools available to shape the future land within use of land within the bay, and the current policies of the 2012 core strategy are being pragmatically applied where possible. The emerging island planning strategy has a specific policy, E8, supporting high quality tourism, which identifies core tourist accommodation areas, one in Sandown and one in Shanklin, and says the council will resist the loss of tourist accommodation unless it can be robustly evidenced that the site is no longer viable for tourism accommodation. The planning inspectors have asked the council whether the policy approach to resisting the loss of tourist accommodation in core areas justified, and this was responded to through the council's hearing statement on matter 8, economic growth. In summary, this statement sets out that the Isle of Wight Council wants to protect tourist accommodation in places like Sandown because tourism is a key part of the island's economy. These areas are popular with visitors and have lots of hotels, restaurants and attractions, so the council sees them as vital to the island's success. The policy aims to stop hotels and guest houses from being lost to other uses, like housing, unless there's clear proof they're no longer viable. This approach supports local jobs, encourages investment in better quality accommodation, and helps build a year-round tourism industry, all in line with national planning guidance. There's also a full discussion in the hearing session on this issue, where a wide range of views were considered by the inspectors. The planning inspectors, in their post-hearings letter, explained that they couldn't find the submitted plan sound and invited the council to consider a number of fundamental areas of concern around the soundness of the plan. The approach to managing the loss of tourism accommodation was not included within this letter. However, the planning inspectors have said that their letter was not an exhaustive list of all the soundness issues they had concerns about. They recognise that there are other matters which lent themselves to more straightforward main modifications. It is distinctly possible, given the nature of the discussion on the issue, that the proposed approach to the loss of tourism accommodation could be included in this. Main modifications are changes proposed to the draft plan that arise following the examination hearings. Once these have been established, they will be consulted upon. Proposed main modifications, any changes proposed in response to the consultation responses will be considered by the inspectors. The inspectors have confirmed in their post-hearings letter that they will confirm or set out in separate correspondence any other straightforward main modifications necessary for soundness. Because of this, it is recommended that the Economy, Regeneration, Transport and Infrastructure Committee does not review and recommend a change of policy at this stage and waits for clarification from the inspectors over what other changes they consider necessary through main modifications before considering any action. This will enable us to be clear about what the planning policy approach is likely to be and whether any further planning policy interventions to sit alongside the Bay Area Place Plan is required, given the weight such a plan will be given under the IPS. Of course, looking at the island planning strategy approach isn't the only thing the council are doing to tackling the issue of empty properties in Sandown. The Isle of Wight Council is working closely with its local and regional partners, including Building the Bay Group, to address this problem and the wider social and economic challenges facing the local area. Our planning enforcement team have resource funded by Sandown Town Council, which is being used to proactively tackle community identified priorities in Sandown. The benefits of this partnership working are now being seen in and around the high street, with building owners improving the appearance of their property and derelict, unsafe buildings being secured from unauthorised entry. We're also working with Sandown Town Council to exploring using other newer powers, such as the government's High Street Rental Auction Initiative, to find new uses for empty buildings. All this work is wrapped around the Bay Area Place Plan, a dynamic collaboration between the Isle of Wight Council and the Bay's 3 town and parish councils to drive local regeneration. The council has also taken steps to address issues with its own building stock, securing £3 million of government funding to restore the previous derelict Grade 2 listed Sandown Town Hall and bring it back to use for youth provision, which is nearing completion. You have a supplementary question, Councillor Ward.
Thank you, Chair. I don't have a question. Oh, yes, I do. Yeah, I'll pose it as a question. What proof do we need? These hotels have been derelict for 10 years. How much longer do they have to be derelict?
Mr. Bolter, do you want to have a quick response to that? I think it was more of a rhetorical question in a way, but I think we do have to have proper evidence, don't we? That's
So thank you, Chair. The current policies that we have allow for the loss of hotels. As was referenced in the answer, this is subject to information being provided to us to enable us to make an informed judgment on a planning application as to whether an alternative use for that site would be appropriate. And we do that balancing up a range of factors. So ultimately, that mechanism is there and available. And indeed, we've seen it being applied and applied pragmatically over years. There will be some applications where, as much as we might want to support the outcome that it will achieve, the level of information has simply not been to the standard that we need to enable us to do that. And that will be governed and assessed and understood through the planning application process. So there are those mechanisms there. There is the ability for that. And there is, of course, a whole range of other facilities, including our paid for, but also tailored pre-application advice service, where any hotel owner that is considering alternative uses can, of course, come and talk to us about their ideas, and we can give them some advice, both in general terms, but also specifically on the issue of the kind of evidence that we would expect and need to see to support their proposal. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the questions. Now, I've got 3 questions that have got the same answer, so I'm going to read the questions out and tell you who they're from. The first one is from someone called Councillor Julie Jones-Evans. There has been major disruption over the past 2 months, in particular to the island's road network, causing significant negative impact on local businesses, services and residents. Some of the roadworks were planned and some were emergency works, over which the Isle of Wight Council has no control or advance notice, which further impacted the traffic flow. What lessons have been learned from this by the Isle of Wight Council and other agencies involved, and how will this learning be implemented for future planned highways works to mitigate their impact on our island community? The second question is from Councillor Sarah Redrup. In recent months, I've received several complaints from residents and businesses in Wootton Bridge about poor communication around roadworks, traffic management systems and road closures. Local businesses have faced serious disruption and financial loss due to sudden or poorly communicated works. Concerns include lack of notice, unclear signage, no clear point of contact, and no indication that businesses remain open during road closures. In some instances, multiple nearby roads have been closed at once, worsening the impact on access and trade. Clear, timely communication is essential to support our local economy and maintain public confidence in infrastructure projects. What steps will the committee take to bring together the Highways Department, Island Roads and utility third-party companies to review these concerns, identify lessons learnt and ensure better coordination and communication with residents, businesses and the wider community in the future? Third question is from Councillor Garrett, and you're here, Councillor Garrett. Would you like to read your question out?
I certainly would, and thank you, Chair. The one-way closure and diversion and one weekend full closure of Horsebridge Hill brought massive disruption to the lives of many residents and significant impact on businesses. A full, transparent and candid review is essential of all aspects of developing and implementing the traffic management plan and its subsequent impact. This is particularly important given the work anticipated by Southern Water in coming months on Horsebridge Hill, Forest Road and other roads on the island. What action will the committee take to ensure that such a review takes place in a timely manner, that it fully engages residents and businesses, and that the review and recommendations are published? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Garrett. So the response is the same for all 3 questions. Thank you for your questions. Having discussed this with the committee chair and with the committee's agreement, we can arrange for a joint presentation from the Isle of Wight Council and Island Roads at the Economy, Regeneration, Infrastructure and Transport Committee on Thursday, the 21st of August. The presentation will focus on how roadworks are managed, responsibilities of the various parties, including what role the Isle of Wight Council and Island Roads carry out in the management of roadworks and what the responsibility of utility companies' third parties are. Using Horsebridge Hill as an example, the presentation will set out the amount, cost and type of additional resources that would achieve the level of engagement with and additional works requested for their residents that councillors have requested through the Horsebridge Hill works. This will provide the committee with the opportunity to assess whether they wish to ask the Policy, Finance and Resource Committee to consider specific budgetary implications. I have no supplementary questions. Councillor Redrup is not here to ask supplementary question. Councillor Garrett would like to ask supplementary question.
I certainly would. Whilst I welcome the idea that the committee may receive a presentation and some explanation of the general processes, I don't think that will fulfil the desire of myself, many other councillors, residents and the businesses of a full, transparent and candid review. And that could start now and should start now. So I'm hoping that through you, Chair, that I would ask the committee to thank the officers for that opportunity, but ask them to go ahead with that full review as is required.
Thank you, Councillor Garrett. Mrs. Lovell, Mr. Owen would like to respond to that directly.
Yes, I think the briefing note will include a transparent review of Horsebridge Hill. What you will find, Councillor Garrett, though, is that most of the questions that form part of that review are already part of the Q&As that are on the website, and also the questions that we put out as a result of press inquiries or as a result of questions, such as the questions that we received today. So there will be a full and transparent review, but what you'll find is a lot of the questions and a lot of the answers that come out of that review have already been answered and have already been put into the public domain.
Thank you.
Can I call a point of order, just for clarification? Questions are being asked of the committee and you're reading out responses from officers. Are all committee members in agreement with the responses that are being read out by yourself? Because you're reading out responses on behalf of the committee, which seem to have come from officers. I'm just trying to understand, are officers answering the question or are committee members answering the question?
I think that's something that could be brought up through the constitution. We are at the moment, we're just working through the new constitution, responding that way. So I think it's something that can be brought up. But yeah, Councillor.
Chair, I don't think that's necessarily the case. I don't think it says anywhere in the constitution that all questions have to be answered by officers. I mean, certainly I've heard some things today that I entirely disagree with, and Councillor Love's absolutely right. I think in future, if questions are coming in to you or other members, or like one was to the leader of the council, any responses should be shared with the rest of the committee and we should discuss beforehand. That's what the intention of the committee system is. And it's more democratic, it's more transparent and it's more accountable. And that's, you know, I'm sorry to disagree with you. I'm no expert on the new constitution, but it just doesn't seem right at all, to be frank. Yeah, I mean, in the way we've dealt with this today as well, it's interesting that Councillor Redrup isn't here, but her question was read out. But the very first question from Councillor Becca Cameron, which I think is quite important, wasn't read out. We haven't had a response to that. It was just said it would be in the minutes. That relates to Horsebridge Hill as well. And the issue of the Section 278 agreement, should it have been in October rather than May? I haven't heard a response to that at all. I do feel that we're being led very much by officers against the intention of the move. I know it's only going to last a year now because of this government, but this is against the democratic will of this council, and it's a case of officers taking control of this council, in my view. Thank you, Chair.
I hear you absolutely. I have got another question from Councillor Cameron that I was going to read out because it's on a different matter. But if you would like me to read out, it's quite a very long question about the Horsebridge Hill. I'm happy to read that out. But in light of the fact that we are going to be having a presentation, I mean, it's our committee. You know, I'm here to manage the meeting, but it is our committee. If you want me to read out Councillor Cameron's first question, I'm more than happy to do so. I could go back to that, no problem. Councillor Jarman.
Yeah, I would like it, and I'd echo what Councillor Brodie has said. Many of the answers this evening I find wholly inadequate, and I cannot support them. I think the answer in particular to Councillor Garrett's question was very superficial. And we are calling here for a review. A review is a formal process. This is not simply a paper presented to us, nor is it a briefing. A review is a formal process. And indeed, I think there are probably a number of people here, and maybe some residents and other businesses who would like to give evidence to that review. So I think we should be very careful what we're doing here as a committee, that this is the members' committee and it's the members who should be dictating the way forward on most of these issues, albeit with officer input to that. Thank you. I'll look forward to the answer to Councillor Cameron's first question.
Just to say, Councillor Ward and myself did want to have a presentation on Horsebridge Hill at this meeting. There wasn't deemed enough time to prepare, given when the works were due to finish and the publication of papers to get it out for today, which is why we're having it only in 5 weeks' time on the 21st of August. There's lots more to come out of this for sure. It's a quite an involved issue because we're bound by legislation, and also some of it isn't down to us as well. It's third party. So I think that will. I don't know if there's anything else that Mr. Rowan or Mrs. Love would like to add to that regarding that particular, looking at a review of.
Yeah, I think it's the point that's made in all too brief question, as Councillor Jarman refers to, that these roadworks are the responsibility of the developer Captiva. Our agent, Island Roads, is responsible for ensuring that Captiva manage the traffic management arrangements properly. There is no real role for the council within this arrangement, but we did step in because we realised the consequences and the implications it was having on the community, and we have upped our game in terms of the communications that we provided. But we don't have the resources to do this on a constant basis for every roadworks that happens on the island. And we don't have the statutory responsibility. Now, as we've said in the review, we could actually come back here with a review in August with a recommendation that additional officers are actually employed to carry out this work. That would be a matter for the council, for councillors to decide. That would be a matter to decide where you're going to get those additional resources from to do that.
I think it might be helpful if we then, when we get to our work plan, there might be some way forward on that as well, in general, with information to members and how we're looking at it. Councillor, I want to get back to the questions if I can.
Yes, just briefly then. I think there is support here for a review process to go forward. That can be debated separately afterwards if you like, but I think we should, put that forward at some point in the discussion this evening. And I think Councillor Cameron's question is very meaningful. I'm not too sure if the information in that answer will answer what's come up, but my view is different to what we've been presented with this evening. My understanding is that Captiva have the responsibility to produce something. Island Roads made a submission. The Island Road submission was not accepted, and a separate plan was put into place, which meant that the roadworks took place during the peak of summer rather than in October, as Island Roads had suggested. But I'll wait for your answer. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, it's a very involved issue, and we're not going to have time to go through all different legal discussions this evening during members' questions, Councillor Jarman. But as I suggest, there's a way forward that we can have information be informed as a committee, have some discussions, and then we've got opportunity to voice it all in 5-6 weeks' time here. So we'll have a bit more information then as well. If that's satisfactory to everybody. So I'll go back to Councillor Cameron's question. I've just got a quick question. I just want to just defer to Mr. Rennie. In our constitution, I think it's something that came out at the committee last week. I think it might have been the Policy and Finance Committee. In our constitution, about the questions on notice, it says a member may ask a question. Now, we don't know if that means one question, which I think was what Councillor Garrett you were discussing, weren't you? So it's a discretion of the chair, because I actually have two questions from Councillor Cameron. What I'm going to do on this occasion is read both of her questions out. But I think members should know in the constitution it says a question. As you can imagine, with these committees are here essentially to work, to make decisions, and if members' questions become very lengthy, then we may not get the work done. So if it comes to a situation where we have lots of members' questions, and we could end up with 39 questions, let's face it, I will always prioritise decision making before the questions, just to let you know about that. But on this occasion, we'll
just to answer that, I think I need to. The first question was actually asked of the PFR committee and is referred by the PFR committee to this one. So her question was not directly. The second one is her question to this committee. So I think if she is allowed one question to this committee, it will be the second one. The first one is a referral by the PFR committee, just to be precise about that. Thank you. I don't think there's any limited to the number of questions that can be referred from one committee to another, but
my answer still stands, Councillor Jarman. Thank you for that. But we will check that out as well. As we're all these new committees, we're basically testing our new constitution and seeing where it's fit for purpose and maybe not. I think we all were told it wouldn't be the best constitution. It would be a legal constitution, and we know we've been reviewing it in 5 months' time now. Well, actually, probably less than that now, 4 months' time. So it's good that we're pushing it. And personally, I've been pushing it on several fronts as well, as some people may be aware. So anyway, getting back to our questions, I'm going to read out our two questions. Got two questions from Councillor Cameron, and then we've got one for Councillor Andre, who's waiting very patiently there. So from Councillor Cameron to the Economy, Regeneration, Transport and Infrastructure Committee. Is it correct the Island Roads proposal regarding the works at Horsebridge Hill, which included starting works in October 2025, was rejected by the Isle of Wight Council, and that instead a Section 278 agreement for May 2025 with diversions via White House Road was signed by Isle of Wight Council as Highways Authority, and did the process of issuing said Section 278 agreement comply with the PFI contract? Response. The terms being used in this question are not being used in the correct context, so definition is included below. Section 278 of the Highways Act 1980 is the legal process by which a third-party developer applies to alter the existing highway network through the construction of junctions, access roads or similar to ensure that new developments can have access for vehicles and statutory utilities onto the existing highway network. This is a legal agreement between the developer and the Isle of Wight Council, with Island Roads Development Control Team acting as statutory consultee. The Section 278 agreement forms part of the planning application and overall approval by the Planning Committee. The Council and Island Roads have statutory duties in relation to network management. These are included in the New Roads and Street Acts 1991, and the functions contracted out to Island Roads included within the PFI contract. We believe that these are what the question is actually referring to. When a scheme has been given planning permission through the committee and the Section 278 agreement has been agreed, signed off, and any pre-works conditions met, then the developer will approach Island Roads to discuss when the works can take place. For schemes of this size, there is usually a 3-month lead-in time from first contact to works on the road commencing. In this case, the works were required to construct the junction for the new housing development that needed to commence occupation by the end of June. The request from the developer Captiva to meet this condition was taken into account when deciding the timing of these works. The request was put forward in the middle of March. If the 3-month time frame was followed, the works would start in the middle of June and run potentially until the middle of September, therefore through the peak summer season when there is increased vehicle numbers on the island due to tourists. Island Roads confirmed in writing that in the middle of March, they could not support the works being carried out in the 3-month peak summer period, and the Isle of Wight Council agreed with that view. Following this, Island Roads suggested works to take place in October after the summer season, but this did not adhere to the condition of occupancy. It was also already known that Southern Water needs to replace 1 kilometre of water mains in the same location and planned to work the 26th of January to 24th of March 2026 with the same diversion route to allow for the works road space. If the works were scheduled for October, it would mean that one-way system and diversion could be in place from October 2025 for that Captiva Acorn Farm development until March 2026 for the end of the Southern Water Mains replacement. It was therefore decided following a tri-party meeting with Captiva, Isle of Wight Council and Island Roads that to ensure that the development occupancy conditions were met, that a key road was clear over the summer period, and to save residents from a potential 6 months on a one-way and diversion system over the winter, that the works could be brought forward for an early start in May. All works have been carried out in accordance with the conditions of the Section 278 agreement, the requirements of the New Roads and Streetworks Act 1991, and specifications of the Highways PFI contract. Thank you. So all these responses will be form part of the minutes. So I've got second question from Councillor Cameron. The A3055 Military Road at Afton Down has been subject to erosion and is dangerously close to the cliff edge. Although we have been assured the actual road will be safe, the cliff is collapsing on the seaward side of the stabilisation section. The road is very near to the cliff edge and what will become a sheer drop when this last bit of cliff falls. Island Roads recommended in June 2024, this section now needs to have the vehicle restraint system installed with 40 mph restriction. There was a huge fissure that was found beyond the piles at the western end of the piling system. This fissure runs underneath the road, but because there was not enough money to extend the road, it wasn't included in the stabilisation project. Holes have appeared that have been filled next to the road. Island Roads recommended in their report that they should install at least one X-tensometer in that area to monitor the movement from the cliffs. When the cliff goes, it will leave a sheer fatal drop. When will these urgent recommendations going to be carried out to safeguard the public and extend the use of the road? The response. Assurances have been provided by Island Roads based upon the nature of the works carried out on the military road at Afton Down in the early 2000s. There is no imminent risk of the road falling at Afton Down. The Council are finalising the commission for Island Roads to carry out some required works on Military Road at Afton Down. To summarise the works to be completed, are the fitting of an extensometer in response to the potential for movement at the western end of the pile solution to detect any predefined movement in that locality at an early stage that would trigger remedial action. Secondly, a vehicle restraint barrier is to be installed in the lower section of the pile solution to address the risk of road users if they were to leave the road at that location. The actions and associated costs were recommended by Island Roads in late 2024, following the council's request for an investigation after movement was experienced on the ground adjacent to the road Afton Down earlier this year. Island Roads have emergency arrangements in place in the unlikely case of a failure of the road Afton Down. This involves the use of monitoring equipment and trigger mechanisms, which will be further enhanced by the above works.
Again, can I call a point of order?
What's your point of order, Councillor Long?
Well, is this committee endorsing this response and these responses as a committee, or are you just reading something that's come from officers? Are you endorsing that? Because you are reading a committee's response to a question. And I don't know, again, if the committee have all agreed that that is the proper response.
Within the procedure rules, I understand when I've been through them a couple of times now, is that the question comes to the chair of the committee. So it's not a response from all the committee members.
It's your response.
It's the response, yes, but it's my response that officers have to work this. So it's very, very technical. I clearly do not have this technical information at my hands. We have to give legal, correct answers
I agree with that.
to the public.
I'm just trying to understand the response because you're taking responsibility as the chairman for that response.
That's my role here is to manage this meeting. That is what's in the constitution. No, I'm just telling you what the constitution says. Mr. Brodie.
Thank you, Chair. And I don't really want to extend this too far because we've already spent an hour just on questions, and I came here for something more than that. But I mean, obviously you were elected by annual council to chair this, and you have that responsibility. I understand that. Questions come to you, and it's perfectly within your prerogative to put an answer, to give an answer to any questions that come in, as far as I'm concerned. What I would say to you, though, is do you necessarily agree with the answers that you've been given by officers? Do you not think on some occasions it may be better to consult with the rest of the committee? And also, would it not be a possible way forward that if there are disagreements, for instance, the public question, the long public question, I agreed with every word of that, and I felt like giving her a round of applause, to be frank. I didn't, but I felt like doing it. And we got a pat answer, insensitive, couldn't care less attitude that seems to be the case all the time when it comes to people with disabilities and the use of the public infrastructure around highways, etc. Now, I think I should have had the opportunity normally under this new regime to say something, Chair. I don't know if you agree with me there, and it maybe makes it even more difficult to manage these meetings. And I don't envy you having chaired meetings. I know what it's like, but I just wonder if that's a possibility in the future. Maybe you could think about that for the future, because of course this is our first meeting of this committee. I don't know if that's helpful at all, but there you go, Chair.
And this is our committee. I mean, my role is to manage the meeting. That's what it says in the constitution. That's pretty much it. But as you know, if we've had 2 meetings this week that I've convened, that we can speak freely about issues that are arising, and we are finding our way. I'm more than happy to take that up and we can discuss it further. There's another thing I'd like to discuss with you as well, how we're going to manage that. It's contrary to the constitution, but then if we are wanting to make changes, and maybe it's helpful to practice some of these ideas, but we all have to remember that we've got to make decisions at these committees as well. So I don't intend for us to have long debates. And I've got 3 hands up now, which I'm not sure I'm going to be taking even, because this really is members. This is our question time, and we do have we have work to go through. We've got officers waiting, but just bear with me. So I don't disagree with you. It is our committee. and we can, within the constitution we've got, we can work forward. But yeah, no, again, I was, terribly, who cannot be moved by what Mrs. Saunders said. I mean, that's why I wanted her to have the extra time to talk it through. Absolutely, So right, if it's really quick, I will take all three of you, Councillor Jarman, Councillor Stewart, and Councillor Fuller. Quickly,
Mine
please.
very quick. The question begins with the word when. I did not hear a date. Can we have a date? The question is when. When normally replies with a date or some dependency on it. I don't hear an answer still on this.
A date for what? I'm not sure. I'm not with you. What do you mean? What date for what? What, for Councillor Cameron's question? Okay. My supplementary on behalf of Councillor Cameron is what you've just heard from Councillor Jarman about a date. So perhaps we could get some more, get the timeline maybe, if that's possible, to Councillor Cameron, a future date in writing. That's fine.
Yeah, that's fine. The answer is at the moment, as soon as possible. And as soon as we have plans and a programme, that will be shared.
But again, Councillor Jarman, we really shouldn't be asking a supplementary, because I think that's what it was, wasn't it? But I'm just trying to manage the meeting best I can. So we can all, yes, remember that. Councillor Stewart, I hope you haven't got a supplementary question on Councillor Becca Cameron's question, have you?
No.
Then quickly.
I entirely hear what Councillor Brodie was saying. I was wondering whether there might be an opportunity for us to, as a committee, to see the responses to questions and to have, if necessary, a response from the committee individually to that particular question, because it may be that additional information which is available to councillors might help with some of this process, because nonetheless we are very aware that the professionals, the officers, will provide that standard information. We will have additional stuff which may be good for that. And very briefly, the second thing is I've kept very quiet about Horsebridge Hill, because obviously, as the person most affected, apart from the actual member themselves, where Horsebridge Hill was, there is a lot that I would want to say about that. And I would welcome the opportunity to have some kind of review process so we understand how we got to where we did, and also some of the things that have happened subsequently that may have helped us actually get through that period.
Thank you, Councillor Stewart. I hear what you're saying. Remember, members' questions can be, not the public's questions have to come in by Monday before the meeting. There is time there for there to be more cross-committee working. But with members' questions, there's only one working day. That, we have to be practical about this. I think we have to be practical and pragmatic. So I think we can give it a go. But remember, there are 9 of us on this committee, and we also have to remember that sometimes there is legal information that we cannot move from as well. So, Councillor Fuller.
It was sort of like in line with what Councillor Stewart was saying. I think if questions are given to us as a committee well enough in advance, then there is no reason why you as chairman and the vice chair can talk to the officers about how that response, what that response actually means, what it actually says. But I think also about action points on putting right anything that we've felt to, or the residents feel that we failed to deliver in the past. And this is an opportunity for both you as chair and the vice chair to be, you are given special responsibility allowances to do this job. And I think this is something that you could go away with officers to discuss once a question comes back. And it's what we used to do as cabinet members, and it's actually building upon your role, and to make sure that it isn't just a soapbox for officers to use the committee system. It's an inclusive process where you as chair and the vice chair are involved in responding to questions that the members of the public have.
Councillor Ward.
Thank you, Chair. I think this is an important but difficult issue to manage. I think if members can put a question in the day before, let's be realistic. How on earth are we going to get an answer from officers review that answer, then go back to you because some of you disagree. It's very difficult. We would have to have our review meeting a day earlier at least. And members would have to put their questions in 2 days beforehand at least. I think that's something that we could discuss at the next review meeting because it's, you know, we have professional officers there, and we rely upon them. I'm sure none of us they don't mislead us, I'm sure. But other people might have different opinions, quite rightly. But we need the time. Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Ward. Right, Mr. Rowe.
Just a reminder for the committee that this committee does not have a scrutiny function. This committee is here to make decisions. This committee is here to recommend that items go on to the committee for decisions to be made, but this is not a scrutiny committee. We are talking about business as usual operations. There has to be a certain degree that officers are in good faith coming up with the answers to these questions. And that's the way the committee works at the moment. And it is not necessarily the committee's place for members to be coming up with subjective views on objective answers that the officers have made.
Councillor Brose,
Well, I'm going to have to respond, you know, because at the end of the day, I'm elected to have an opinion. You know, I'm not a professional person. I'm elected by people here to have an opinion, and I do have strong opinions about things people know. As the person who initiated the committee system, who chaired a future governance working party for the best part of 9 months or whatever, with people like Chris Quirk and Chris Jarman on it, and there's other people in the room. Andrew Garrett was part of that as well. You know, it certainly was our intention that these committees would not only be policy development, decision making, but an element of scrutiny. And the proof of the pudding is that we made a very deliberate decision endorsed by council not to have a corporate scrutiny committee. So there is elements of scrutiny. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, thank you. That's the thing I've been pushing at recently. Right, thank you. It's been a very useful conversation. And thank you for everyone's input, and we will take that away and see how best we can try and manage your suggestions there. Notwithstanding, we have to give, you know, factual, legal answers to some technical questions that we get. But yes, we need to remember we are members here, and we need to remember to speak back to our residents in language they understand as well. So I'm going to now Councillor Andre, who's been very, very patient there. Councillor Andre, would you like to ask your question?
Thank you, Chair. Before I ask my question, I would like to just point out that I did actually put this question in on notice, and yet questions that were verbal questions with no notice were given priority. And I don't feel that's right to give priority to verbal questions on no notice.
I think they were brought forward as points of order, which I was trying to deal with it in the best way that I could, trying to manage this meeting. So I do apologise, but your question is very valuable. I'd like to hear it now.
Thank you, Chair. So my question is as follows. In respect of item 5A on the agenda tonight, I believe that both the Local Transport Plan 4 Officer Report and the Appendix 1, which is the Local Transport Plan 4 plan itself, are seriously flawed, as neither contain any reference to or inclusion of the option of a fixed link tunnel between the Isle of Wight and the mainland. As we've already heard, in terms of the 4 objectives highlighted in the plan, there is clear evidence already in the public domain that a fixed link tunnel would deliver the positive and beneficial outcomes sought. And I've made a reference to the website solentfreedomtunnel.co.uk. So my question, will the committee, or if I'm meant to ask the chair, perhaps I should address this to you, Chair, will the chair ask officers to add a section to the report and also to the Local Transport Plan 4 plan itself, and include under each policy and measures section options that include both the progression of a viability study and how a fixed link tunnel would deliver on the plan objectives, so that this option can be fully included in the public consultation proposed and also be included in the final Local Transport Plan 4 plan itself following the public consultation. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Andre. I'll read the response. Of course, there was also a response earlier to Mr. Feeney's question as well, which I hope you were you were able to hear. The response of the Isle of Wight Council to the Island Transport Plan does acknowledge the current issues and long-held concerns related to cross-Solent travel. At this time, it would be inappropriate, even within a 15-year plan, to commit to an individual measure to address these issues, or that the council alone could or should act in this capacity. This is in recognition to the complex challenges that would need to be overcome before a strategic business case could be arrived at for such a major piece of national infrastructure. There are challenges that would need to be overcome for a fixed link, including the high level investment required, which would far exceed what the council will be able to secure. Additionally, any proposal would require support and involvement with our neighbouring authorities, landowners, government departments, as well as various other bodies. Likewise, given the scale, it will be necessary to secure a majority consensus from island residents and business that a particular proposal was the most appropriate use of local resources as well as public funds. On this basis, the future of cross-Solent travel is referenced within the Island Transport Plan, and to take proposals forward will require a sub-regional approach. Therefore, it's the intention to highlight within a final draft, following consultation, the potential for the mayoral combined authority for Hampshire and the Solent to take this matter forwards as part of the devolution proposals. In the interim, our focus will be to support the ongoing work of the MPs and the leader, as well as continue to work in partnership with local ferry operators to explore potential opportunities for improving current services. Do you have a supplementary, Councillor Andre?
I do, yes, but I will be seeking some clarification. So in terms of devolution, so what you're saying is that you do agree to have the fixed link tunnel option taken forward as part of the devolution process under the mayor. That will be an option going forward. I wasn't quite sure what the response was actually committing to.
I'll bring in Mr. Chandler. My understanding is because it's large national infrastructure, those decisions will then be at the combined authority level and able to bring down the potential funding, which is, as you say, is beyond us. Mr. Chandler, would you like to add to that?
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councillor Andre. It is the case that what we're proposing is that it's a step back in regards to what is the solution to the cross-Solent issue as at hands and what is perceived as the problems before we arrive at a solution. And because the infrastructure is required both sides of the water, the impacts, both environmental and others, would be felt equally both sides of the water. Therefore, it'd be inappropriate for the Isle of Wight Council to act alone in that measure. And likewise, we would need that sub-regional approach. Obviously, should the mayoral combined authority go forwards for the Solent and Hampshire region, then that would certainly be the vehicle by which those proposals should be taken. It will be chosen as one of the options or one of the potential considerations being taken forward, because again, even the fixed link itself, there are different models by which a fixed link could be achieved, because those considerations need to be all on the table.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor. I know that was your point of clarification. Was that your supplementary?
It wasn't my supplementary. I do have. Which I think does somewhat conflict with that, but I will put it with your indulgence. So in September 2017, the then cabinet committed their support for a fixed link study. Councillor Wood, I think you were part of that very cabinet, but unfortunately nothing progressed. So will this committee commit their support for a fixed link viability study and actively work to secure funding to commission the fixed link viability study?
Well, the question I can't answer for all the committee, and this question is a question to the chair. So I don't intend to bring every member of the committee in, if you don't mind. But I think that we've been very clear that actually such a
it's already been answered.
Will not, well, providing that the combined authority, the devolution goes ahead, that is where that decision will sit. And no doubt we can have, if you want to hear other members' points of view, I guess that's a question at full council that we can all debate, or motion at full council that we can all debate upon there. I don't think the members' questions are actually supposed to be a way for us to debate questions and come to it's not a motion. it's only an agenda item. It's the fact that you can ask a question, get an answer. So I'm not going to bring all the committee in to ask what they feel about a fixed link, if that's okay.
I hear what you're saying, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you.
I will bring it forward as a motion.
Well, yeah, and that's why in anything that happens, there would have to be a wide-ranging public consultation. Thank you very much. That felt like a lot of hard work to get through those questions. It's a new part of our process, and I think there's a lot of teething problems. And I think maybe all the committee chairs would be really helpful if they got together, and the vice chairs, to discuss how we're going to move this forward, and obviously all the committee members to feed into that, because it's not only just this, there's all sorts of areas that we need to, that maybe are at odds to what the intention was and hasn't quite come through in the written word. There we go. So I'm going to ask you to, I'm going to ask again if it's okay. I've had a request that we move on to decisions now, but the B is brought forward before A, which will be extending the geographical scope of the existing Newport and Ryde commercial frontage design guide supplementary planning document. Again, both our items on decisions today are just to move to public consultation. So if that's okay with you, I'm taking that, it's okay. I'm going to bring in Mr. Bolter now to present his paper. And we've got our recommendations are on page 167, and I'll read them out when we've finished the debate.
Thank you, Chair, and I'm very pleased to be able to talk to this paper to the committee, and I'm very grateful for the Chair for moving it to become the sort of first item for consideration of this committee. Thank you. So as set out in the paper, councillors, you'll be aware that we've had a Newport and Ryde commercial frontages design guide supplementary planning document, which is a bit of a mouthful of a title, so apologies, in place. And that's been we found that to be a really powerful planning tool for the 3 or so years that we've been using it. But unfortunately, from my perspective and the officer's perspective, that the SPD is limited in its geographical scope simply to Newport and Ryde town centres. So that means that the excellent outcomes that we've been able to see, such as, you know, just thinking about somewhere like Stainless Games on Newport High Street, that the SPD has been instrumental in achieving, unfortunately just aren't as easy to achieve elsewhere across the island. So because of this, we would very much like to expand the geographical scope of the SPD to include all the designated town centres on the island and conservation areas across the island to aid that wider town centre regeneration aspirations and programmes. So effectively the ask in front of the committee this evening, please, is as per the recommendation, which starts that process, because it is a formal process. We can't simply just amend the existing SPD. This is planning after all. We do have to go through a formal process to alter that geographic scope. Thank you, Chair.
Very much, Mr. Bolter. Right, any questions from the committee on this? Yes, Councillor Jarman.
Can I just ask what consultation has occurred already with other town, parish and community councils about expanding the scheme into their high streets?
Mr. Bolter.
Yeah. Thank you, Chair. There has been no direct consultation to town, parish and community councils across the island. This proposal or suggestion has come forward both from the professional staff and from a small handful of town, parish or community councils that have asked to be able to use this SPD when it comes to thinking about comments on planning applications in their own town centre.
Anything else, Councillor Jarman?
It's just to follow on to that with a small supplementary, because I know Councillor Brodie is already and others are raising their hands very quickly. So my concern here is that we will be going out for a public consultation when the town, parish and community councils have not had an involvement to date. I was pleased to hear that some have requested it. I wonder if we could know which ones have requested it, please.
Are you able to give that information, or do you want to just write when you've got the information at your hands? Brilliant.
Thank you. Yes, the town council that I'm thinking of specifically is Sandown Town Council. And ultimately, as councillors will see from the recommendation, it is to publish for consultation. And we can get any answers on this matter from the consultation responses that we may receive. Thank you, Chair.
So I've got Councillor Brodie, then I've got Councillor Fuller, and then Councillor Ward.
Thank you,
And
Chair.
Councillor Best.
Thank you, Chair, and without wishing to steal your thunder at all, because you are the elected member for Newport Central. You know, I am a Newport member as well, and was at the time that the Newport one went through, a member of the Community Council as well. And this was all linked into the Heritage Action Zone as well, plus also Newport and Carisbrooke Community Council's engagement with planning in terms of planning enforcement. And I have to say that since this design code came in, this design document came into place with what the Heritage Action Zone achieved, and the combination of work with the planning and enforcement officer that the Community Council partially funded, it led to some great improvements in Newport High Street and adjacent streets, to be frank. You've seen, I mean, for instance, a media outlet, the Isle of Wight Observer, did very well out of the Heritage Action Zone, which they don't talk about very often. But and obviously, Mr. Ball has also referred to stainless games, or whatever they're called. I can't remember their name. It seems a strange name to me for a PC software company, but there we go. So I mean, I would heartily endorse this as something to be extended to any other, you know, particularly town centres, you know, and let's face it, a lot of our town centres do need some work. Sandown in particular, Ian, I'm sorry to say it, you know, but it doesn't look too great. And I think it would be a real benefit to them. Obviously, you have to go through a public consultation. That would allow, obviously, the town and parish councils. You don't need to say community council now, because we've already got it. You know, it's your opportunity to participate in it. But I can't see anything other than it being good for any town centre in particular. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Brodie. Councillor Fuller.
Thank you. I think this is this shows really one of our SPDs being sort of like victims of their own success, really, because I know in the early days there were a lot of naysayers saying, well, what is this? This is just going to be another document that's going to gather dust on the shelves of sea close. That isn't the case. You know, I've spoken to town councillors across the island, not only in Sandown, but also in Ventnor and Cowes, also having very, very important conservation areas, and they want to have a bit of this. Why not? And I think this is not a decision we're making tonight. It's about going out to consultation, getting their feedback, finding out what those towns and communities with listed buildings, with conservation areas, want to do further to actually improve their roles. I remember a few years ago when I was a member of the Isle of Wight Heritage Trust, being able to go for funding to be able to support Ventnor High Street being regenerated. This is all part of the same sort of like initiative, trying to support our town centres, trying to regenerate our town centres, which is one of the things that I think we have a priority that we want to see done. So yes, I would support this this consultation wholeheartedly, and the sooner we can put that in place, the better.
Thank you, Councillor Fuller. Councillor.
Just a couple of questions, really. Is it enforceable, and is it retrospective?
Mr. Bolter.
Thank you, Chair. So I'm going to deal with them in reverse order, if that's okay, Councillor Ward. Is it retrospective? No. What it does is it's a tool that allows your planning officers to shape and influence proposals that are submitted to us through the form of invariably planning applications, then for us to use the provisions of the SPD as a material consideration when determining that planning application. So this isn't a tool that unfortunately we could sort of walk down the high street and say this one needs improving, this one needs improving, this one because the SPD says so. It is, however, that really positive tool that when we do get applications, or we do, or if anyone actually, not just planning officers, but anyone from the community engages with those shop owners, and it's not just shops actually, commercial frontage owners, then there are some real clear, tangible and helpful guidelines that we would expect them to be following. And then if they do submit an application and they don't follow those guidelines, then we're in a much stronger position to be able to refuse on those grounds and require what the SPD is looking at. In terms then of, is it enforceable? Well, yes, ultimately it is, from the point of view that if an application is made and permitted that complies with the provisions of the SPD, and then they do not build what is permitted, then yes, we can and will take enforcement action. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Beston.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I've read this report in full. It's very clear. It's very concise. I've learned what pilasters are, etc. It's very good. I would personally like to see this being endorsed and Shanklin Town Council being involved with this. We've got a conservation area in Shanklin Old Village, and that leads down to the High Street. Parts of the High Street, as you're probably well aware, are in need of regeneration, in need of reopening, etc. This gives the shop owner or potential new shop owner clear guidance. Okay, not all of the shops can be brought back to how they were back in the Victorian era, granted, but it could be a tool to get that going without a doubt. So I would like to see Shanklin being involved with that if possible. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Bolter.
Yeah, thank you. And just to pick up on that point, that's why essentially it's been framed in terms of its geographical coverage as town centres and conservation areas, because town centres from a planning perspective mean a very specific and identified area, and not all places that you would imagine have a town centre or you would see it as a town centre on the ground isn't a town centre in planning terms, and vice versa. However, the addition of the conservation area designation as well enables a much more encompassing geography to cover most commercial areas on the island.
Pass it off then. So we've got Councillor Quirk.
I too am supportive of the principle. I think it was good to have clear guidance. We have examples of in the old village of Shanklin where property owners have become the victim of unscrupulous double glazing salesmen and put things up that sort of had to then be ripped out because of enforcement notices. So I think having it clear is good, and having policies is good. I do think that you need to get the endorsement of the town and parish councils that you're applying this to, and I think they do need to have a say in it. And also probably actually at a regeneration plan level, that's where we've got the Bay Plan, there are issues that really are common to Shanklin Lake and Sandown that maybe this could be addressing all three, and they're probably the same in Newport and Carisbrooke and other areas of the island.
Hearing in your question there, Councillor Quirk, will this be something that the Bay Place Plan, Building the Bay, would look at separately and do a separate response to the consultation specifically?
The individual councils are the responsible bodies that people are elected to. They should make the decision, but actually something that is common to all of them could be implemented through the place plan as guidance, yes.
Yeah, please. I mean, it all started with the place plan. It all started with the place plan for Newport, shaping Newport. Then Ryde came next. Then from those place plans, we were able to put applications into Historic England for the the high street heritage action zones from which this was paid for. So it all started with the regeneration strategy that this council took back in 2017, 2018 to have a place-based regeneration approach, which I think enables people to be connected to their places, and it makes these places come alive again. So anyway, I was just sort of trying to understand your question a bit more, Councillor Quirk. Councillor Stewart.
Thank you. Can I, going back to Councillor Brodie's first intervention, can I ask whether the town and parish councils, leave the community council to one side, can be consulted either directly or certainly through iWork ahead of the game so they know what's happening? And secondly, can I confirm that it will actually apply to the metropolis where I live?
So you're asking that we pause the consultation, go to and consult with the town and parish first, and not doing it all at the same time?
No, thank you. I would not wish to delay this process. I think this is an excellent idea. I think it was a fabulous thing. I would like to see it going ahead. Okay. What I would like to do is make sure that the councils, the local councils, are aware of this immediately. And I will leave it to the professional judgment of officers to decide what that immediately will be.
Thank you, Councillor Stewart. Mr. Bolter.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, so again, as mentioned, it is planning. There are set processes, and as part of that, there is a statutory consultation period. And what that would do as a matter of course, and in accordance with the council's arrangements with town, parish and community councils, I would have been writing out to them all anyway to notify them of the consultation and to invite their comments through that process. If the committee would like, in addition to the recommendations in front of them, and I can ensure that we write specifically to them and include in that correspondence to ask the question of whether they want to opt in and I suppose ultimately in my view choose not to take the benefits from the SPD, and we can do that very much at the earliest opportunity following any resolution. And Councillor Stewart, through the chair, yes, won't say in public where you live, but there is a conservation area and it would apply within the that conservation area. Thank you, Chair.
Just would like some clarification over this opt-in. Is that what we're aiming at? That actually a parish or town council, community council, well, we've actually already got it. I find that a little bit concerning that an area could opt out just because I just had a dozen councils and so they didn't want it, and I think that would be of detriment to the wider area.
No, I'm not advocating that would be the approach, and certainly from a practical application, it would certainly be very much easier for us to apply consistently and evenly to all. I was just merely reflecting on some of the conversation from the committee, and ultimately I suppose that is an option that is available for the committee to consider to then shape the content and the direction of the policy approach.
Post the consultation, I'm guessing, when we've got the consultation results back. Yeah, thank you. So I've got Councillor Jarman and Councillor Fuller's coming back for a question.
So like many, I'm broadly in favour of this, but I'm also in favour of localism. And I think local communities should be able to have a large say in what happens within their communities. My only concern here is that we might end up with a one-size-fits-all. And clearly what goes on in the centre of Newport may not necessarily be a wonderful fit with what goes on in the metropolis of Bryston, for example, just to choose a random place on the island. So with that in mind, I think what I'd be looking for is some form of assurance that within the consultations, local communities could augment or differentiate what occurred in their locality within the holistic nature of a plan. I mean, it may well be that what goes on in Totland, for example, is quite different from what goes on in Sandown, which is different to the seafront at Ryde, etc. And the idea of having one policy for the whole island does trouble me a bit.
That's Jarman. That was more of a comment, wasn't it? I think that would be. Do you want to come back on that, Mr. Bolter? I think that's the whole point of having the consultation. I think that local distinction is really important. I'm going to bring you in a second, Councillor. I was going to say something regarding that. So much of the, and you can come in and correct me or back me up or not on this one, Mr. Bolter, but in my understanding is a lot of our town centre architecture is sort of, Georgian and Victorian. So a lot of it is very, very similar. So we can then apply the same colour palettes, fonts, pilasters, the way that the way the buildings are presented, and also backing up with where you've got historical evidence and photography and so on and plans. But there is that element of local distinctiveness. I mean, there's probably in Brighton, there's probably not so much of that architecture in the town centre. It's probably probably even older or for a different era. So that local distinctiveness. I guess my question really is, how are we going to capture that local distinctiveness? We've got a beautiful policy document here with lots of pictures of my ward, so I'm obviously very, very proud of it, and I was very pleased that Councillor Brodie said what he did. I mean, obviously we have got Ryde in there as well, obviously where Newport goes, that everywhere else follows. So it's a really important, but it'd be good, so we're going to be able to capture some of the local distinctiveness around the island in our final document, I guess is my question. And then I'll bring you in, Councillor Fuller.
Thank you, Chair. No, that's not the intention of the document itself in terms of its content. The changes proposed to the document to enable it to be adopted as an SPD to extend the geographical coverage are quite honestly minor typographical changes, things such as removing Newport and Ryde from the title to make it that geographically generic document. Ultimately, adopting it as an SPD, it's not establishing new policy in planning terms, but what it means is that a supplementary planning document is capable of being a material consideration when determining an application. So that would mean that the content of the SPD would be read alongside all the other policies of the development plan when determining a planning application, which would include a range of other policies in terms of local distinctiveness and other things, such as, for example, if there was a conservation area rather than a town centre, then the conservation area would be identified with its characteristics, etc. So that would be very much, whilst it is a reasonably generic document, the principles are sound, I would say, across the island, and would be applied on a local and bespoke basis. And as an aside, Chair, can I just say I've never heard the word pilaster used so many times in this council chamber. It's very pleasing to me as a planner. Thank you.
Very pleased to be informed, and thank you for that response. And of course, this wouldn't trump things like listed building status. That's a whole other process. So it's one of your, as you like to say, one of the tools in the toolbox that we've got here. So I've got Councillor Fuller.
It's a very, very quick question, really. Consultation. If we're going out to talk to town and parish councils, I think it's important that they have the opportunity to respond. And we know that there are town and parish councils that don't meet during the month of August. Will there be the allowance for committees, and particularly town and parish councils, planning committees, to be able to discuss this? Because I don't want to not capture the view of our local town and parish and community councils. I know Newport is already part of this, but I think all councils, and I would like to see other Ryde and Newport involved in this, because they have good practice that they may want to share, and I think that is also quite useful to do as well. So I think if you say if we had somebody from IWALC here, they would say, "Oh, why are you consulting during August?" Nobody ever meets in August, which is not the case for our larger towns that have conservation areas.
Mr. Bolter.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, just to be absolutely clear, committee, we are not proposing to consult on this document during August. You will have seen in the report there are no consultation dates in there. We are seeking agreement to do so. We wouldn't consult over August because again that would breach the sort of the convention that we have agreed with parish and town and community councils not to consult over those busy times. So we will consult at the appropriate time after the summer holidays, and we will ensure, as we've spoken about, that we will be specifically targeting the town and parish councils with the consultation information.
Councillor.
Just a very quick supplementary. I don't mind if it does go out to consultation during the summer holidays, but I'm just thinking about extending the period instead. So not only can town and parish councils engage in September, but they also have notice and they can ask questions during the August as well, because you know many of them do meet and they would love to have the opportunity to maybe probe a little deeper.
Response, please, Mr. Poulter.
Thank you, Chair. It is not in our operational work programme to consult at this moment in time, Councillor Fuller, due to a range of other priorities, leave, etc., over the summer. But we will certainly look at how we can make as much information accessible to everyone as soon as we can.
Thank you. Now, if any other members present would like to ask a question, more than happy to take questions from other members. Everyone's shaking their heads. Okay, thank you very much. Yeah, I just wanted to say one more thing that we've seen in Newport as a response to, because we have the design guide, is that businesses who aren't part of the HAS scheme, or they're actually using it themselves, and we've got a really great example down in Pyle Street where they've got some amazing pilasters, and they've used the colour scheme, the fonts, and they've just picked it up because it's such a user-friendly thing. It really is a fantastic piece of work. So it's for everybody to use. And as Councillor Brodie said, this as a SPD alongside our planning enforcement, we've really started seeing some great changes in town that actually aren't really costing a lot of money either, because everyone knows what they've got to do and how to get a better result out of that. So yeah, just to say, I know you said it already, Councillor Brodie, but we're very, very pleased with the work of our planning enforcement officer. It really is making a big difference in the town centre, and I'm sure Ryde members would say the same. So our decision is that on page 167, the committee approved the publication of the revised commercial frontage design guide, supplementary planning document appendix 1 for public consultation. And should there be comments received during the public consultation objecting to the proposed changes, committee agreed to receive a further report on the comments and any changes proposed by officers to the SPD before considering the adoption of the SPD. Should there be no comments received during the public consultation objecting to the proposed changes, the committee delegate authority to adopt the SPD to the strategic manager for planning and infrastructure delivery. So that's our choice. Choices. Propose that. So you're very clear. So if there are, you're seconding. Sorry. Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Brodie. And the other one is delegate the authority to the strategic manager for planning and infrastructure delivery to make final editorial and/or presentational changes to the draft SPD. Any such change will not alter the meaning of the SPD, and editorial changes there will be grammatical, typographical, and consequential in nature. So are you comfortable? Basically, if there's no adverse comments, then we delegate to go forth to the strategic manager planning and infrastructure delivery, and they will then do any changes, typos, etc. But if there are comments, it will come back to us. Okay. So I've had it proposed by Councillor Fuller, seconded by Councillor Quirk. All those in favour? That's everybody. Thank you very much. Right, so we're going to go on to now back up to A, which is a local transport plan. So, Mr. Chandler, would you like to present that?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, the report in front of you is, and the purpose of the report is to seek approval of the current draft, which has been shared as the appendix to the report. This, and I would like to say thank you everyone for your patience in arriving at this point and having the local transport plan 4. It's something that we've been working on for at least 5 years. Unfortunately, it's been held up by a number of issues. The pandemic originally, then we took it through directly afterwards for a couple of years of stakeholder engagement and a lot of work to arrive at a draft, at which point we had to halt because the Department of Transport was going to release further guidance on local authorities developing local transport plans. However, that didn't happen, and that finally was announced last year. So at which point we then decided to pick this back up and revise it, bring up to date, because even within those 2-year period, a lot had changed, and therefore we've tweaked it. But the majority has been informed by that original engagement with stakeholders, quite a wide range of stakeholders, and the early part where we formed the vision, the objectives, and the policy areas which are set out within the document. But basically, the purpose of the document is to provide a pathway for the next 15 years in respect of transport. It's the policy, the development, and its delivery for the island. And really, it takes into account a number of different, you'll see the different policy areas, different objectives, but it aligns nicely with the draft island planning strategy. It aligns with the adopted climate environment strategy, the work the Regeneration have been doing, and obviously the place plans that a number of areas have also adopted, and likewise local cycling, walking improvement plans. Many other different policies were considered as a part of this, as well as the general demographic and the evidence base that forms that. And I appreciated the comments made by Councillor Jarman in regards to that, informing that evidence base, and certainly we'll be taking those comments on board when we're looking at revising this draft throughout the period of the consultation, because there were some purposes as to why we didn't adopt the census of 2021 informing some matters, but others, quite rightly, we should pick up on when it comes to demographics. However, this will give us our opportunity as an island to set out what we want to achieve over the next 15 years. And then it sets it out to government and potentially the Mayoral Combined Authority, should that proceed, what we would like to achieve for the island, and therefore, sets us in a good position alongside many of our neighbouring or local authorities who over, I believe, the last 7 years have adopted a local transport plan 4, which this will be. And so that when looking at a strategy for the whole sub-region, should that be agreed, then there will be an aligned view of what the transport priority should be, rather than the council referring to something that was, and the combined authority referring to something for the island set in 2011, because I'm sure we all recognise we've moved on quite a bit since 2011. And really just wanted to give the opportunity for committee to review the main headlines within the report. Obviously, the document is very detailed. It goes through a number of different areas, but the consultation is the point in which we take the wider views. And whilst we've done stakeholder engagement before and we've had quite a bit of input there, we're ready to take this now out to the public, to wider stakeholders as well. And we want that meaningful feedback, because we want this to be representative, and we want it to be covering as many of the factors that are important to local community and businesses, so that we can make sure that we're saying the right things and setting out our priorities correctly. One thing I will also mention in regards to the devolution proposals is that if those proceed, the Transport Authority responsibilities will be lifted up in respect of transport strategy to the Combined Authority. So this represents potentially the last time the Isle of Wight Council itself will have an opportunity to set its own transport plan. So therefore it's important, and why I'm expediting this to take this forwards. But before we get on to the consultation and any questions over the summer, we're not going to run it over the summer. We are certainly going to be running a 12-week consultation during the autumn and into the early part of winter. But it does mean that we'll be doing a lot of work in the background, because we're going to have to do iterative amendments to the document as we go through, as we get that feedback, because we don't have the time to do that. Subsequently, we've got to do that as a process by which we can hit these tight deadlines. Of course, we'll be taking this back to the other committee as well in regards to policy, finance and resources for noting, because when it comes back through to approval, it will be seeking a final approval of the draft or the final draft of this document of this committee, that committee, because it's also a statutory policy, and also then taking it to full council because of the wide implications of the strategy. So we're going to have to go for a quick governance decision-making process when we get the other side of the consultation period. But I hope that sort of sets out the scene of where we are.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Chandler. That's very helpful. And yeah, especially outlining the process. I think that's very understandable to where this is going to go next. So we've actually got quite a journey to go on still, haven't we? So we've got consultation, 2 committees to go through before it goes to full council. So we've got to get all this in between now and May before we lose the opportunity to have our own say on our transport plan. Have I understood that?
That's correct. Yeah.
Thank you. That's great. So questions from the committee, right? Councillor Beston.
Thank you, Chairman. Coming from an ex-scrutiny committee, which was very similar, to scrutinise is to ask a question, and to ask a question is to scrutinise. So obviously you're quite happy to take questions, absolutely. One of the things that I did pick out on page, and you've sort of kind of answered it in a way, but just to clarify, page 9, paragraph 32, and assuming that the LTP is in place and the mayoral combined authority goes ahead in May next year, does that mayor have significant influence over transport policy and infrastructure? And if so, could the LTP be significantly altered or rejected? And I know that we've got to get this plan in before then, but I'm trying to think after that.
Yeah.
Chandler, yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Beston, thank you, Chair. I can confirm that, yes, the mayoral combined authority, if established, will take the lead in respect of setting transport strategy for the devolved area. So therefore, they will have to come up with a wider strategy beyond our geographic boundaries of the LTP. But by having this in place, we have got an adopted document which is, is representative of the wishes of the island. Therefore, they should be giving it due consideration when forming their own. It is very likely that because of the different geographic areas within that subregion, that they would be looking to adopt a model based upon probably existing LTPs for those individual geographic areas. But it is the case that they can set their own strategy. And so one of the pieces of work going through that will be identifying what all of our LTPs say to see what the salient points are, or if there's variances, beginning to highlight those as well.
Supplementary, Mr. Councillor.
Just a quick one. So if that is the case, would there be a facility for the Isle of Wight Council, whatever form that takes then, to engage with the mayoral authority to agree that plan?
Yeah, it's the intention that obviously they can make the decisions for the sub-region, but it will be down to the unitary authorities who retain certainly the Highways Authority responsibilities to deliver on that. So therefore, the local authorities are therefore going to have to, unitary authorities going to have to consider how that translates, maybe a higher strategy into their area, but also they can then feed back as unitary authorities who are there to deliver on what's for the combined authority, what they're setting out, because if it's not agreed, then obviously that conversation's got to go through. So therefore, the best thing to have is something in place that already sets our priorities, so we've got a place to start from.
Thank you. Councillor Fuller.
I remember it well. I was sat on the very first committee that looked at the local transport plan many moons ago, and working with Chris Wells on that. I was chairman of the Roads and Transport Committee, and it was a real pleasure to be able to move this forward with the very first plan. At the time we thought that we were pioneers. Well, here we are sort of like 30 years on, and here we are now. Really, really good. I think, you know, certainly some of the policies that we're seeing about encouraging inclusiveness and accessibility. I think when members of the public spoke earlier on, you know, their views concerning that are really, really important. And I think this is certainly the way we are heading, with a growing older population, a population that is maybe not as mobile as everybody would like to be. I think to be able to tick those boxes, and you certainly seem to have ticked those boxes in some of the policies that you and Atkins have put in, have been really, really positive. So I would very much endorse this, and would be very happy to propose the document, because I think it's absolutely spot on.
More than Councillor Jarman.
Stuart, thank you. Thank you, this and your team, for putting that together. You know, I'm always a skeptic. Okay, and what worries me is what's not written. You know, we have statements like, for instance, 26% of the exhaust fumes actually come from cars. Yeah, okay, but our pollution levels are negligible. You know, and I just think someone will use that to create car-free zones and things like that, when actually we don't need them. However, please, let's let it go out to consultation. Let's see what people have got to say. But, you know, always a skeptic. Thank you.
Councillor Jarman.
Thank you. I'd sent in the paper to officers and to members earlier. I did have a number of problems going through the document. Some of them are detailed in terms of links. Some of them are missing information. I'll give you an example of that. I noticed on page 28, where it invites us to view the full evidence, it's simply followed by XXX in red, with no ability to go and see the evidence, which would have been quite useful. And such matters as that, in a way, to me, undermine the document. If I can't see the underlying data that supports something, I generally have a problem with it. The second one is, I acknowledge what was said in terms of the history and the genesis of this going back 5 or more years. And I think the paper at the moment, unfortunately, reflects those early inputs in terms of the data which is used throughout the document being very historic, and certainly in most cases not up to date. I provided a couple of references to government websites which show where up-to-date evidence is available online, where the government themselves have published up-to-date data. In fact, some of it as recently as 2024, and the ONS data as recently as June last month, 25. I also note that lots of other parts of the council now use the BI database, which has most of the demographics in it, and a lot of data which is used throughout the council. Here, unfortunately, we're using data which is at variance with that because of its aged nature. And in some cases, we're extrapolating information from 2008 and 2011. And we know the extrapolation is false because the 2021 data and the ONS data has shown it to be false. And that includes a lot of the population dynamics, the progression of population growth, et cetera, And my worry is that by moving a document forward, which has an inherent falsehood in its data structure, we're making assumptions within it, and we're modeling assumptions on that false data, knowing it to be false, knowing it to have been superseded not only by the information we have available to us, but by government publications and the ONS, who are generally kind of robust bodies that we trust. And we will be using data which is at variance with other parts of the council, which troubles me greatly. So I'll just note those very concerning observations rather than being a question. If I move that on to a question, the issue would be, is it possible for all of those issues to be resolved and for the paper to be corrected with contemporary data, with the current government data, particularly on transport, and with the ONS data, which has been published, including the demographics from June 25, prior to it being distributed by this council? it would then be on a basis that was at par with other policy decisions of the council and using the same data as other departments and other policy documents already do.
Thank you, Councillor Jarman. Thank you for taking the trouble to put it all together, and I understand you have sent that on to officers plenty of time. Mr. Chandler, do you want to respond to that question?
Yeah, by all means. In 2024, we asked Atkins and Hampshire to review the current or the draft that went back to 2022 in its current form. So the data, unfortunately, will always be a date stamp, a point in time in which you can't, move from. I do get the points in regards to some of the references back to 2011 census and so forth, rather than the 2021 census. But what we will be doing through the next stage is not just looking at this document, but the evidence base, and we will be publishing the evidence base that has formed this draft, as well as the integrated sustainability appraisal document for everyone to be able to review as well alongside. But bearing in mind, these documents are probably even larger than this document itself. It's probably, we didn't want to anticipate it as being overly onerous, but the direction of travel with this will be much the same. The policy direction is fairly unchanged within what we've seen from neighbouring authorities who've taken, like Hampshire, who have been working on this, adopted their local transport plan for last year, and basically they had direct input, that policy team, in its current version. But what we will do is, if there are any demographic data that helps make the case, or certainly discounts some of the priorities here, will be taken into account during our review. That's part of the review during the consultation, because what we don't want to do is slow up the process. So we go through a detailed review of the evidence base, which then holds up when we can go live with the consultation, which then means we can't meet the critical deadlines to have this in place, because best practice is to have a 12-week consultation process. Therefore, automatically, we're having to really have a tight timescale to get this all done by. But certainly within those 12 weeks, it gives us the time, and even before, to start working on this. And this is what we shall be doing. But we will want to do is get this out as soon as possible to give the public and the wider stakeholders an opportunity to have their views.
Yeah, we're on a bit of a timeline here, aren't we? We need to meet. So basically, all the issues that Councillor Jarman's brought up will be looked at during the 12-week consultation period. So things will be running side by side.
Absolutely. And one point I will make, that there will be remaining references to the census data in 2011 because of the impacts, the recognised impacts the pandemic had on the 2021 census when it came to transport, because obviously people shifted their behaviours to such an extent that some have bounced back to what was happening before, or certainly some are not indicative of what happened in 2021.
Okay, yeah, thank you. Supplementary, Councillor Jarman.
I do. First of all, to acknowledge the reply, I still have a problem with us putting out a document for public consultation, knowing it to contain so many variances with other data that this council uses. And I understand the issue that some of the information relating to transport in 21 may be problematic because of COVID, but that in itself has been superseded by government publications on transport data in 22 and 24, which I've cited, which are readily available. I cannot see why we would be putting out a document with such significant problems in its database, expecting to try and resolve those issues, which are significant, during the process of a 12-week consultation. I mean, it would be very difficult for the public to look at a document and acknowledge that it has errors in it, which are going to be put right while you're thinking about it and commenting on it. Surely would it not be better for us, this is the question, would it not be better for us to correct the document, use the contemporary data, and then invite 12 weeks of public consultation? I don't know how long it would take to update it with the data. The links are readily available. The data is on the BI platform, which this council uses. The numbers and demographics are well known. I mean, we hear them trooped out in adult social care and children's services all the time. For us to have a document which is at variance to that is a problem.
Yeah, I absolutely hear. I think it's the risk that's inherent in that, isn't there, with not getting the right information out. But the risk is us not having a document ready before before May as well. So there's a few things to balance up here. But I would be interested to know how long it would take for us to be able to align these data sets before it goes out of a consultation.
There's some data sets which could be readily updated because the information is already there, but there's others which are far reaching, which would take much more time. You know, when compiling the evidence base associated with this at the very beginning, it was, dare I say, probably about 3 to 4 months to do that piece of work. It's quite considerable. And this is, and I've already highlighted to the team at Atkins and Hampshire as well, the strategy documents and policy documents we've adopted since this was published, like the poverty strategy, like, and I'm trying to think of the other one as well, but there's other key documents which we have adopted, and we need to make sure we're referencing those as well. So I've already sent those across to them. And likewise, I'm minded with the economic development strategy that is in the offering, that we're aligning where possible with what the intention is with that. So as that comes through, we'll be asking them to make retrospective amendments to align with that as well. The problem is an LTP will always be a point in time. So what we get within a 15-year lifetime of a document is the opportunity to update it periodically. So in this, it sets out short-term, medium-term and long-term aspirations, 5, 10, 15 years. At each one of those, effectively, we do a redraft of the LTP or the ITP so that it's ensuring that it's still up to date and reflective. Sometimes it might be the case that when we get so far through the process, it needs quite considerable amendments because government policy direction changes, or like we declare a climate emergency, those sorts of things, which we weren't perceiving beforehand, but then we have to then take into account. So it's a live document as well, and will be amended throughout and referred, but the time points will be 5 years, but certainly anything that can be amended early on, we will be looking to do that.
Sorry, your professional opinion, will there are some data sets that some things you can change now before it goes out, I heard you say that, and would the other issues that we would intend to work out with Atkins over the next 12 weeks, will they materially affect the contents that the public are going to be consulted upon?
No, they won't make a significant material difference because whilst there has been policy change and there has been other demographic changes in the interim, they've pretty much aligned back with, and the priorities remain similar to what was even before 2020. It's just that that whole pandemic gave it skewed all of the statistics and all of the baseline and the potential forward planning for the policy areas that actually now they've sort of bounced back. So therefore, both within this, what has been revised looks at before, during, and since that time as well.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chandler. So I've got Councillor, sorry, apologies, I've got Councillor Quirk, then Brodie, then Beston.
We need a transport plan. This one is driven very dominantly by the environment. I believe in we need to sort the environment. I believe in global warming, but if you can't align your aspirations in terms of environmental improvements with the economy, you're doomed to failure. Because individuals are the reasons people don't buy electric cars. One of the big reasons is you can't find anywhere to charge them, and they cost so much more. So, and until you get the financial realities balance, the motivations aren't necessarily there. But so that's the downside. The aspirations are right, what the plan is aspiring to do. But if you can't get that financial aspiration linked into the environmental aspiration, I can't see it succeeding. I think we need to approve it because I think we do need to have a plan, and certainly it will be better to go into negotiations with an elected mayor with a plan in our pocket than it will be to go in unprepared. So I will support going ahead with it. But I do raise the reservations that if you can't get the economics to balance with the aspirations in terms of environment, it's not going to work.
Thank you, Councillor Quirk. And my understanding is what the government have told us, that once we have the magical mayor and the combined authority, the money will be following. Mr. Chandler.
Yeah, I think it's also within the Island Transport Plan, it recognises affordability being a barrier to various modes of transport. And one of the sub-projects, and this is where things like the electric vehicle charging infrastructure policy strategy, which was adopted a couple of years ago, sets out the way to tackle that. Because yes, electric vehicles are more expensive. There isn't many charge points at the moment, and the equation for many families struggling to do that is a difficult financial boundary. However, through the Levi project, local electric vehicle infrastructure project, we're proposing, and that was agreed to proceed with that project, at least 500 charge points on the island, which will only increase beyond that. If demand increases, the concession contract that comes out the back of that, the commercial operator will see the opportunity to expand that further. Likewise, we can help drive down the tariffs in which people then have to pay at the charge points as well. Because again, one of the barriers that came up is I don't have a driveway. The Levi project looks to address that, because we'd be focusing on those areas where they don't have a driveway, because those are the areas where you need some public infrastructure to support the transition to alternative modes. And so these are some of the barriers we'll be tackling, and this gives us the baseline to tackle those particular areas. But again, I completely agree, finance is going to be key in taking this forward, and therefore on the back of this, we'll be creating a delivery plan, which is then set out in regards to the potential likely costs of those and the way forwards in which those would be financed as well. But really, we need the strategy first before we get into the detailed delivery plan, because otherwise we can sometimes be caught up in the weeds.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chandler. I've got Councillor Brodie. I'm sorry, apologies. You have a supplementary, Councillor Quirk.
On a slightly different tack, I would like to see the case made for a tunnel or bridge or some fixed crossover link. I want to see it both in the economics of it, because my back of a fag packet calculation says it can't ever work, and I don't even smoke. And the also the environmental impact of the amount of concrete, seal, and everything that you're going to need to do that. I suspect we will undo all of the rest of the environmental improvements that we get from the rest of the plan. But I think it would be good to have someone to actually do it, slightly more sophisticated model than me just looking at recent tunnels and how much they cost per mile to build, and multiplying it up by inflation and saying, oh, one's this long, okay.
Again, I think that
the numbers are phenomenal.
I think again that will be a major piece of infrastructure that would then sit at the mayoral authority level, wouldn't it? I think. And apologies finally to you, Councillor Brodie.
Thank you. Not a lot to add, really. I mean, essentially, I largely support this. I mean, it's not a perfect document at all, and I think in my remarks about the public question earlier on, I am sceptical sometimes about the way the motor vehicle is constantly prioritised on the island at the expense of the pedestrian, the cyclists, the people who aren't behind a steering wheel. I know that's an opinion that members of this committee would disagree with me about, but I've always felt that way. And I say that, as I declared earlier, I'm a regular cyclist. I used to walk regularly on the island. The number of pavements, etc., that aren't wide enough for people, as the lady, Mrs. Saunders, referred to, the number of unsafe roads for cyclists, etc. The fact that our cycle network is absolute rubbish, to be frank, in terms of surface and maintenance, etc. And we've discussed that privately as a member of the committee. But I mean, essentially, we have to have something in place, because this is about us having a level of influence on the mayor. Now, I think you said earlier, Chair, when the fixed link was being discussed, I wrote it down straight away, if devolution goes ahead, it will go ahead. There's no doubt about it. We have an authoritarian government that will impose it, no matter what this council thinks, no matter what anybody thinks. We will get an elected mayor. The irony is, of course, we'll probably get a mayor that will not be of a political persuasion similar to the government. So I don't think anything will change. Government will still order you what to do. And I think transport will still be in the hands of central government rather than local authorities. But we have to, if we are going to go into the mayoral combined authority, I don't think we have any choice really other than to take something to the negotiating table. I don't know what we'll get out of that. But there are time pressures around this. Councillor Jarman, as ever, has gone into a great detail here. I would suggest that, you know, as part of the recommendations, we also add in that those data sets that need correcting, that can be done, urgently, Stuart, ready for the autumn, so as at least we can get this moving. Because if we delay it, it's not going to be done. Look at the timeline. You know, we're looking to bring this to full council in February. After February, there's very little happens. You know, March, I think there won't be any full council unless there's an extraordinary one. And come the end of March, we're into what we're not allowed to call the purdah period, but, you know, it will be there, and I'll be disappearing into the sunset around about then. But to the pleasure of some people. So, I mean, I would endorse Councillor Fuller's proposal that we support the recommendations, but I would add in that we insist that officers do change the data sets that are changeable. And I don't think Stuart's resisting that at all, to be frank. You know what I mean? I don't think he'd be daft to be honest. I mean, we need to get as much contemporary data in there as possible. So I suggest we probably need to try and move to the vote soon, Chair, as well. Thank you.
Yes,
As a proposer, I was going to suggest exactly the same as what Jeff had said. I think it's important that we have up-to-date data sets, and that is part of the document.
Yeah, that will form part of our motion now. But I believe Mr. Chandra's already said he would do that anyway in our earlier questioning, and then anything that is left out won't materially affect the document that goes out for consultation. I think that's very clear. So we have to move the vote, but as Councillor Beston's been waiting a long time, I'll allow Councillor Beston's question.
Thank you, and I will be very, very quick. It may be a small point, it may be a large point, and it comes under page 54 of transport. 2021, Island Line had a £26 million upgrade. Part of that included braiding passing loop. And I know there's been some issues around trains meeting ferries, etc. In your paragraph, you want to explore the possibility of upgrading the braiding passing loop. Is that a further upgrade, or does that need to be taken out? And that could be a very small amendment.
Yeah, that would be reflective at the time when the original document was done, that was obviously something that was due to happen or was happening, and so it would need to be updated. However, we are continuing to work with Island Line on trying to sort the timings of the services out.
Supplementary.
Yes.
Indulge me. So, so could you confirm then? I mean, it's difficult. We have those problems of trains meeting, ferries, etc. It's not been discounted that it could be a further upgrade to mitigate that problem.
Yeah, absolutely. We will continue to work with Island Line and whether it's Great British Railways in fullness of time on the proposals to, increase or align the timings of the cross-Solent ferry service with the rail service. But obviously at the moment, we're getting more positive news than we did a while ago, where they tried to achieve a 30-30 timetable and unfortunately didn't hit that. So now they're working a 40-minute headway, which means you don't get that clock face arrangement. But it does mean that there is a connection with the ferry service, albeit there is having to wait at one end for the service one way or t'other. So it's either you're early or it depends how early you are for the boat and so forth, or if you're getting off the boat, how early you are for the ferry. But yeah.
Thank you. I've just read the Constitution earlier the week. I thought there was something in there where we actually have to have a vote to move to the next. I don't think it's not called move to the vote now. It's called move to next business, I think. I'm not sure that's just within full council when we've got a motion, or whether we're just trying to get some clarification on that, whether we believe we need to have a vote on it to move the, that's what it kind of says in the, I've got in our lovely council procedure rules, which we are obviously moving through.
Yeah, point of order. I would suggest as chair, you can ultimately make the decision to move to the board. We've had quite a good discussion about it. I think the majority of people support this. Maybe Councillor Jarman does, but it's up to you. I don't think we need a vote.
I appreciate that, and you know, I need to manage me, but I also need to be really mindful that we have got a whole new set of procedure rules. I wouldn't want anyone to be upset by me not doing things properly, but I think it may be, if we've got a definitive answer.
Chair, from the side, if I may, it may be best if you take an informal view from the committee. If there's no dissent to moving to the vote, then obviously then you take that as the steer to move that and take the vote. It's only if you think that there's going to be any objection to doing that and they want more debate.
Yeah, thank you. I think I'll do exactly that. So we just want to indicate, are they happy to move the vote? Thank you. And we've got one dissenter. We've got Councillor Jarman.
Chair, I'm happy to move to the vote. I just wanted clarification on what we're agreeing. So Councillor Brodie proposed an alteration to the text that we have in front of us, which is that that prior to these actions being taken, that the data is updated as much as it can be during that summer process with the data. And the only thing I would ask him if he would consider a slight alteration to his suggestion, which he will then,
it's actually Councillor Fuller.
well, he will then put it to Councillor Fuller again. Yeah, is if we do that, could we prioritise the correction of the data so that the data which is corrected first is the data which is at variance with the data Isle of Wight Council already uses in other policy documents. So the first priority would be to bring it in line with our own data sets, and then to look at other data sets after that, because I'm sure time will be short. And I wouldn't expect them to do 10 steps, but if they can only do 7, let's make sure that we're consistent with ourselves first.
It's how long that takes as well. We've got to take that into, and so it doesn't impact on our timetable that we have to stick to. Would you want to just quickly respond to that, and then we will move to the vote?
Yeah, once we've had a review of what needs to be updated, and obviously thank you, Councillor Jarman, for your comments you wrote in as well, because that does give us a direction in which to go, and those are ones which we should certainly focus on first. And we'll review the others as well. Thank you.
So we're going to move to vote now, and the recommendation that we're voting on is that the committee approves the current draft ITP for publication, and that the committee approves the commencement of the public consultation in autumn 2025, with the addition that any data sets that can be altered between now and the publication of the public consultation are done. Okay, all those in favour? That's everybody. Thank you very much. Thank you. Right, where is my agenda? Paper. Yeah. Is that my agenda there? Yeah. Sure. So we now on to committee work plan. So we've had two sessions this week with the committee on Tuesday and today, and we've got a working list of things that we would like to see, that we believe need to come to the committee, because there'll be decisions we know are coming down the road. There are other issues that we would like to pick up on as a committee that are important to us, but all mindful that we've only got another 4 meetings left of official meetings. Obviously, presumably we can have extraordinary ones if necessary. So I've got the list here. So I'm just going to read through it very, very quickly. It's not a very long list, and you might find some of it aligns with what you were thinking anyway, what we've got to do. So our priorities are, and we've grouped them together in 1, 2 and 3, and I've got other ones as well. So we've got student accommodation on the Shoulder of Mutton site. We've got the film studio skills and supply chain, the adult skills, the tourist economy, the DBID and accessible tourism. And we've got the economic strategy for the Isle of Wight and Solent, seafront regeneration, town centre regeneration, high street auctions and HAS, floating bridge 7 / Medina crossing, PFI, roadworks lessons learned and implementation of those lessons. We've got the cycleways, rights of way and tourism infrastructure, including the Green Link and the English Coastal Path. Devolution in general, so we understand where we are with that. It's almost like an ongoing issue. Libraries and museums, including the Guildhall. We've got the athletics track down in I think it's Lake Sandown on the border there. Records office update, the island planning strategy, government funded regeneration projects and future funding opportunities. Adult skills ready. 20 mile per hour place and where we are with the place plan. So I think I'll give you the list. Don't worry. I'll type it up. Don't worry. But I think what the committee would like is for us to actually have briefings on the above. So I mean, I'm up to speed on quite a few of these, but some of them I'm not at all. Obviously, I haven't really done transport. So what we would like as a committee is to have briefings on the list, and then work out from then which ones we may change our priorities depending on where we are with certain issues. So we know we've got consultation on the floating bridge happening very soon, and we know that we'll have to talk about the DBID. I think that's coming up in October. So we do have some milestones that we know we've got to hit, but there's some other items of interest, and so it's very important that officers had the view of the committee as to how we were going to, what we wanted to see on our work plan priority. Given the fact we've only got, till March, and then we are facing the end of our committee system, possibly in March. So it's all kind of very weird at the minute. We're trying to find our way through it, but also it's really important that we can try and make some progress on some really important issues. So I'll open up to the committee, then welcome some comments from officers as well. Councillor Brodie.
Yeah, I'm aware that must seem like an extremely long list if you're an officer, given resources, etc., and capacity. But I mean, they're just things that I think that we all thought were things that we were interested in. But the priority, I think, from my point of view, I don't want long briefings on everything. As I said to you, you're probably across a lot of this because you had the cabinet portfolio for much of this before. Obviously not transport, but much of the rest of it before. Was that we had, before our next meeting, a session with the director and any other officers he thinks is necessary, for a couple of hours, just to tell us where we are on each of these issues, Colin. It would only take, I guess, 10 minutes on each one or whatever, just as we know, because what I think officers don't always understand. Councillor Jones-Evans may have been well across all of these things, and Councillor Jordan, who's a member of this committee, in terms of the highways and infrastructure. The rest of us weren't. We weren't part of decision making. That's why we've got a committee system, Colin, to be frank, because although I've been elected member of this council for my 21st year, I know very little of what's been happening in recent years, very little indeed. And if I'm going to make a positive contribution to this committee, I need to know where we are. I hope that helps officers understand why we've got this massive list, which I suspect could get down to about 5 or 6 items tops.
Yes, so it's okay if I bring in Mr. Rowan and then you, Councillor Jarman.
Yeah, I think there's a combination of briefings in there and decisions. So, for example, the floating bridge, the replacement for that's something that's coming to the committee in October for a decision. The DBID is another one that's coming to the committee for a decision. So there's a number of decisions that need to be taken, and as part of this, you will need a briefing beforehand. There is also, as you said, Councillor Brodie, there's a need for us to do some informal briefings on various topics. So one of the things we're thinking about is a PFI briefing in October or September, we need to have a discussion about the best time to do that. There was an original decision original idea that we brought that in August, but Councillor Jones-Evans thought that wasn't necessarily appropriate because of the holidays and everything. So there will be opportunities. I think you're right, we do need to have an opportunity to bring forward some of these issues to get everybody up to speed as to where we are, because that informs your decision making, it informs your idea generally of what this committee does.
Councillor Brodie.
No, Chair, that's absolutely fine by me.
Okay, great. I've got Councillor Jarman. And so, so can I bring Councillor Jarman, then bring you in, Mr. Chandler?
So Chair, just to cover some of the discussion we had earlier, The key reason for the briefings is not to deal with the recommendations that will be coming up later in the year, is to bring us up to speed. That's the first thing. There may be a second briefing and a second paper, which is to deal with the issues that are before us in September, October, or November, or whenever, before we run out of runway, as Councillor Brodie articulated very clearly earlier, with gusto. So I think the bottom line is to have those up-to-date briefings as quickly as we can. I would suggest within the next 6 weeks, to get that material at least a week before the informal meeting with the respective officers. And we did agree that in some cases, we would also ask for informal material to be provided as a briefing by external parties as well, so that we will have internal material, we will have external material, and then perhaps a week after we've got both those, we can sit together with the officers and deal with any questions about that we may have. So just to refine the process a bit and add some definition to it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jarman. Mr. Chandler.
Thank you, Chair. One item that has been added to the agenda, which isn't appearing on the list at the moment because it's come up since, is the decision in relation to approving the Transport for South East England's revised transport strategy, which is out for a decision to take through to their partnership board in October for sign-off. But obviously it's been briefed in the interim time, and Councillor Fuller, as the council's representative on the partnership board, will have a briefing of that ahead of that time. But I just want to make sure that's brought here so we can seek approval before we take that back to the FSE. So it enables then Councillor Fuller to make that decision within the partnership board.
Helpful. So, I mean, well, I will electronically send the list over to you. I've given a paper copy to our clerk, so that they've got that for the notes, so then we can maybe look at it together and then move on from there with a definitive list, hopefully. And once we've had some background understanding, things may alter, I think, as well, when we actually look at, well, yes, Councillor Jones, you may want to look at 20 miles per hour, but that may not happen during this the lifetime of this committee. So you may say that to me, or you may not. So yeah, we want to be pragmatic, but we want to do stuff as well. We want to make decisions. Yes.
Just a quick question on devolution, because arguably that goes to the Policy and Resources Committee. Is that devolution in respect of the services within this committee?
Yes, that's what
so
yeah,
economic development, regeneration, and transport.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah, how it affects that, how it will affect that. We just need to, I've put like a SWOT really, we've got to understand what our opportunities are and obviously, well, what our analysis is. So are you content with that way forward, that we can have a yes?
Yeah, I think the process is, Chairman, through the constitutions, that we have a discussion with you and we work out what that work programme looks like in terms of briefings, decisions. We bring that back to the committee, and then if the committee decides that they don't want a certain item on, then that's their decision, etc., etc. So that's the process.
If I think there's also a process where we can actually be informed, have just an up-to-date, so everyone's up to speed on all these items to help us, you know, triage it down into what.
I think it's a pragmatic decision based on the resources available for officers to service that. So yes, but having looked at this list, I can't see an issue with looking at these, but there has to be a recognition about the resources available to be able to deliver all this in a short space of time.
We understand that. What I'm trying to get is we need to be informed to be able to. I mean, Councillor, I'm not over a lot of what's on this, but some of them not. But they all need to be, because we're all decision makers together now. So we all have to be on the same have the same level of understanding as much as we can. So I'm going to bring you back in Councillor Brodie. Then I've got Councillor Jarman and then Councillor Squire.
Yes, sorry, Chair. Just to say that the briefings that we're talking about, the initial briefings, are not to be brought back to this committee. Those are briefings which are those. Okay, those briefings are to occur before the next committee meeting, separate to the committee. So we have those briefings on each topic individually sent to us with the opportunity to have a discussion with officers on that subsequent to that briefing being sent to us. So that's what we want to do, an up-to-date briefing on each of those topics. We have prioritised them, and I'm sure you can cover that off with officers on the list. But we need those briefings pronto, because until we have them, we are out of date and uninformed, which is a very bad situation to be. So it's not something that we're asking the officers to bring back to the next committee meeting. We're asking for those briefings very quickly on each topic. And if they're constrained in terms of only what they can write in 2 or 3 days, let's take that, because that will get us on the path.
I think that's what I said, wasn't it? Yes, Councillor Brodie.
That's not what we agreed. That is not at all what we agreed. We said, frankly, as I said earlier, that list is extensive. I'm a realist, Colin. We're not going to deliver all of that. If we delivered 3, I'd be chuffed. But what we want more than anything is a couple of hours with you and whoever you need to give us the headlines of where we are. I don't need a paper in advance. I'll listen to you. I'll know where you are. I'll know who's leading on it. And then we can make a decision what we can productively do in the next 8 months. And that's not what my understanding was. And I don't think anybody else understood that either.
So we definitely don't want to have written briefs on all of these sent out to us before. We want to have an in-person discussion to then be able to sort of whittle that down. Mr. Minns.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I was going to probably say a very similar thing, really. I would very much, as an officer, appreciate an informal briefing with the members around this table. There are many things on that list which are very much in their infancy. There isn't a lot of information to do. I couldn't produce a report for some of those things at this particular moment, and I'd want your input before I start producing the report, because it's very important that you have that input so we don't go away producing reports that are of no interest to you. So I'm very supportive of having those informal discussions at an early stage, because I think that will save us time in the long run.
Appreciate that. And I don't know if we really wanted to, there's quite a lot on there. We would have the director, Mr. Owens, oversee it all and have these assistants come in. So we do all in one session, whatever he thinks the most practical.
Just a note of caution that August is a holiday period. So yeah, we're committed to giving as much information as we possibly can in a shorter period of time.
Well, thank you. I think, sorry, yeah, had you have Councillor Quelch, you want to come in? Were you just waving at me? No.
But basically, we're not asking for officers to do lots and lots of work producing long papers. It's headlines, but a list of the projects that are current and what the status is. And it's one side of A4 and it's 16 points, so I can read it.
Mr. Rowland.
I think arguably there are a deeper dive into some of the issues that we already provided when we did the first briefing for you in the committee. Unfortunately, you weren't available, Councillor Brodie, but we did a big, this is the whole lot, and what you're asking for is for more discreet discussions about particular issues, which we can do.
We're all on the same page now. What we all want to be is informed, isn't it? So we can make good decisions. That's all we want. So, and to be productive in the short time that we have this committee. And this time that we spend together, we want to make it as productive and as pleasant as possible, don't we? Right, so I'm going to close that item off now, and I'm going to end the meeting and at 19:41. Thank you everyone for your forbearance this evening. It's been a longer meeting than I anticipated. Thank you very much and good evening.